episode number 040 of Something Else with Arya and not KJ. My name is Arya, and today we are talking about Mid-South Wrestling from June 3rd, 1982. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the program. And yeah, we've reached 40 episodes, although I guess if you include all of the Smoky Mountain shows we're doing, this would be like 44, but we're not counting that. Don't ask me why I'm counting it as a different count. I'm just doing it, it's a quirky thing. You got to appreciate the random quirkiness. So welcome to the program. Um, and yeah, so yeah, today we got Mid-South. We got, of course, our Weird News of the Week segment. We'll see if any other wrestling news pops up while we're talking. Odds are, since I'm recording this Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, odds are there won't be. Saturday morning at 11 o'clock a.m., by the way. But yeah, by the way, as I'm recording this, is May 13th. It is my brother and our occasional guest co-host Brian's 37th birthday. So wishing him a happy birthday as everyone listens to this 2 days late, at least. Um, and so yeah, as you're listening to this on Monday the 15th, 2 days ago was Brian's birthday. So wish him a happy birthday, will ya? Get him what I got him, which was nothing, because we're nearly 40-year-old adults, both with lives, and he's got his own family, and I've got me, and that sounded sadder than it meant to sound. Wow, I really threw myself under the bus on that one, didn't I? Oh well. Well, I'm sure we'll have Brian out at some point in the next couple of weeks, and he can talk about that if you'd like. But let's talk about Mid-South, shall we? So it's Mid-South Wrestling, June 3rd, 1982, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I'll be honest, this week is probably going to sound a little dull, but this week is really starting to get things moving. If you know what to look for, if you know what's coming, this week really starts moving things in that direction. Next week, you know, we shove in your face a lot of this stuff. And, we're about 2 or 3 weeks away from some big happenings here on Mid-South Wrestling, here on Something Else. And I may have just told everyone to stop listening for 2 or 3 weeks, but don't do that. Keep listening to the show as you currently are. And, you get to follow along with us. You can watch these shows. I believe they're on YouTube. At the very worst, they're on Peacock, which, depending on if you're an Xfinity customer or not, is somewhere between free and $4.99. And I, 4.99 a month to watch Mid-South Wrestling, sounds pretty good to me, to be perfectly honest. Plus you have everything else. And now I'm a shill for Peacock. Maybe I should get them to be a sponsor next time. Anyway, let's go to the intro of the show. It's Boyd Pierce and our guest co-host of the week, everyone's favorite, the Oklahoma Stampeder, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, and a great card headlined by a North American Heavyweight Championship match. Bob Roop, the champion, defending against the challenge of the Junkyard Dog. Captain Redneck Dick Murdoch is here, Ted DiBiase, and Dr. Death Steve Williams will be back. Our guest commentator of the week, the man who cannot be outdone, who gets more votes every time we receive mail, Cowboy Bill Watts. Bill?
Well, thank you, boys. As long as I'm getting your vote and your invitation, I guess I'll be here with you, and I certainly enjoy it and appreciate it. And I want to say we appreciate the fans and their participation, and especially Precious Paul Ellering with these kids that appear on these little Spotlight on Precious Paul segments, and I think they get a kick out of it, and they get to watch themselves back at home when they see Mid-South on the air. But we'll join right now Precious Paul, and he's going to show a different way of training. I think possibly Boyd Pierce, he may drink a little of the beverage that's in these things, but he's taking the six-pack, the plastic six-pack holders in this feat of strength, and he says that, you can have a single one, or you double it over and there's two, or you double it over again, there's three. Anyway, you'll see Precious Paul finally with 18 rings that he does. It's rather unique, and then he also has a unique way of treating old expired license tags. Let's join the Precious One now.
All right. So I'd like to think that Bill is more complicated in explaining that than I am. Essentially, what we're going to see here in just a minute is Paul Ellering is going to take soda rings. It's plastic soda rings that, I don't even know if they still have them. I don't see them anymore, at least where I am. You don't really see six packs anymore. But, those soda rings that you're not supposed to throw in the ocean because fish get caught in them. Um, he is going to try to pull them apart. And eventually, and we'll get into everything here in just a minute, he one-ups that. And the good news is he actually succeeds this week and doesn't try to explain how it's better to fail than it is to succeed. Let's go to that, and it features a moment that can only be described as Paul Ellering being Paul Ellering.
And the spotlight once again is on precious Paul Ellering. Paul Ellering likes to work with kids and trying to teach them how to build a near-perfect body as he has.
You know, Racer, Precious Paul's had a lot of bad luck lately. And Precious Paul had another setback. I had to go to the doctor, Racer. And I asked the doc, I says, Doc, I just don't feel good, Doc. And he says, Precious Paul, you look bad. I said, I know I look bad. Look at that arm. That arm is bad, but I don't feel good. The doctor ran a bunch of tests on me. I asked the doc, I says, Doc, tell me, am I going to be all right? He says, Precious Paul, you might have to hold it off a little bit. I don't think you're quite ready. I says, Doc, what do I got? He says, you got a fatal disease. It's been affecting hundreds and thousands of people all over the country. I said, Doc, what is this disease? You know what he said to me, Reeser?
I have no idea.
He said, Precious baby, you got Pac-Man fever.
Yes. Good old Paul Ellering. I can't wait until I'm sorry, not that I can't wait. It's gonna be sad when he leaves our program here in a few months. Um, maybe does anybody have Paul Ellering's contact information? We need to get him on the show here to talk about these things. I should note before I describe everything that goes on. So Ellering has a bunch of people in the ring. He's got 4 children and 2 adults. And one of the adults looks like Chris Pratt. And, if you told me that he's Chris Pratt's uncle or something, I'd believe you. But anywho, so what he does here, and the music starts, so we can't play it because, I'm trying to post these things on YouTube, which, by the way, I forgot to mention all the things. We'll do that here in just a second. But he's now inventing a form of exercise that he calls press size. Take basically the first 4 letters of precious and the last 4 letters of exercise and mesh them together as one fun little word there. So what happened here is he took the 6-pack of soda rings, the plastic rings, and he's folding them up together. But first he has the kids, he gives each of the kids a 6-pack to rip open the rings basically and yank them until they pull open. And a couple of them succeed, a couple of them fail. He folds up 2 of them to give to the adults. One of them gets it, one of them doesn't. And so then he folds up 3. So he's got 18 soda rings and he pulls them together and rips them apart. And I mean, it probably looks more impressive than it sounds. But yeah, so he ripped up the soda rings. So when he throws them in the ocean, you don't have to worry about them catching on any fish there. Then Reeser handed him a license plate, an actual license plate that, if you're not, because who's staring at Reeser's hip and, that area of his body. But Reeser's holding a license plate in his hand. He gives it to Paul, and Paul rips it up. By the way, I'm posting all these things on YouTube, starting from episode number 000. So, go check those out. In addition to everywhere else you can listen to this fine program. tinyurl.com/somethingelsepod, Angry Marks, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Overcast, Pod Paradise, Castro, Podbay.fm, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. Everywhere that you steal your podcasts from, these are available for free. No lies. You would know that because you're listening to the sound of my dulcet tones right now. But like I always say, A, these are all real places, and B, we give you choices because sometimes, well, you may not like Spotify, so I'm going to go to Apple Podcasts. Like Apple Podcasts, so I'm going to go to Castro. Probably the only time anyone's ever said that. I don't like Castro, so I'm going to defect from Cuba and go to Radio Public. You have your options here. And yeah. So then once Paul Ellering gets done ripping apart soda tabs, we have our first match, Dick Murdoch versus the Turk. Now, you might remember last week, Dick Murdoch was brutally attacked by one-man gang who teamed with Hangman Harris to hang Dick Murdoch over the top rope from the ground, choking the life out of him, and he had to be saved by Coco Samoa slapping him in the back of the head, which, as we had fun with last week here. Now, the way Mid-South tapes, they tape 2 shows back to back every other week. Last week's show was the first taping, and so this week's show, not even 2 hours after, not even 2 hours, not even an hour after Dick Murdoch got hung over the top rope, Dick Murdoch is out to wrestle the Turk. And, and people talk about how Vince exposed the business and all this other crap, and AEW's this and all this crap. And it's like, and I'm not giving, a pass to anybody for dumb booking and to making things, exposing wrestling as not being real. But I would think that exposing it to your most hardcore fans, that hanging a guy over the top rope and then he comes out as good as new an hour later, I would like to think that that did a pretty good job of exposing wrestling right there. Somebody email Jim Cornette about this. So, as always, the fans ringside stood up and saluted Murdoch as he comes out to the ring. Boyd Pierce, who just had a tremendous day, said Dick represents America because his blood flows red. Not sure what color the rest of the world bleeds, but apparently it's not red. Next week, we have a big match in more ways than one. It is the one-man gang versus Ernie Ladd, one-on-one. Finally, they're going to get it on right here in Mid-South next week, and we will talk about that and so much more when that comes up. So nothing terribly exciting here. Murdoch wins with a brainbuster after kicking Turk in the face. Ted DiBiase versus Randy Bass was next. Watts mentioned how a few weeks ago DiBiase was fined $2,500 for leaving the announce desk and attacking one-man gang when gang was trying to injure Ernie Ladd. I hear DiBiase post-dated the check for 2020, and thus that's why he had to steal money from the state of Mississippi, because he had to eventually pay his fines to Bill Watts. This isn't a situation where, maybe he had like a payment plan or something, and Watts was finally able to regain the money. I mean, 2,500 plus interest over, 38 years. It explains what happened there. And DiBiase, the last couple of weeks especially, and I'm not saying he's ever been a smiling, happy baby face, but the last few weeks he's definitely been more aggressive, shall we say, and more of the getting things done, more business-like Ted DiBiase. And he proved it here again with the quick win over Randy Bass. He picked up the win with a power slam. Then we got the second professional career match of Dr. Death Steve Williams as he takes on veteran Billy, the Star Child Star. Very similar to last week's match. Dr. Death is still very green and still comes off the ropes with too much hip, KJ, but he is still explosive, and it's obvious, beyond obvious, that he is going to be a star one day. Once he's got a bit more training, once, he's dedicated all the way to wrestling, he's going to turn out pretty good. And they mentioned that, he's going to still be going back to Oklahoma again in the fall. He's a red-shirted senior to play football at the University of Oklahoma. Barry Switzer, who's the head coach of Oklahoma at this point, wants Williams down around 260 pounds, 265. And they claim Williams is tipping the scales at about 300, which is believable. It looked like he was around 300 pounds at this point. Watts noted that he gave Dr. Death his wrestling boots, and it was getting to the point where he's really pouring it on, which again shows one of the many differences between 1982 and 2022 or 2023, or, as the analogy I'm going to make, 2010, 2011. If you remember, if you were a Ring of Honor watcher, 10, 12 years ago, when Jim Cornette was booking, Davey Richards was his top guy, and he really put over Davey Richards to the point where, Davey was Jim Cornette's boy, and, people like hardcore fans were turning on Davey Richards because of this, and also because it was when Kevin Steen was, getting super over as the anti-authority heel. Um, and in some ways, like, I don't want to say it ruined Davey Richards, but in a lot of ways, it hurt Davey Richards because everyone knew Cornette's the booker, and now Cornette's on TV, not just putting over the world champion, but putting over the world champion to the nth degree, where you're like, okay, the guy's great and everything, but he's obviously being pushed because he's Cornette's boy. And I believe that actually played into the Kevin Steen storyline when Steen eventually got the world title. And for those who don't remember or don't know, Kevin Steen is, of course, WWE's Kevin Owens. And Williams lays in the forearms here. He does the running 3-point stance tackles. He doesn't take a single bump in this match, which, hey, if you can get through a match without taking a bump, good for you. And he wins with the Oklahoma Stampede. They show a replay of the Dick Murdoch, Hangman Harris one-man gang angle from last week, which, again, it's funny because of everything we've already seen so far in this episode. And then we get Rick Hangman Harris versus Mike Hudspeth. Mike Hudspeth, our great friend we talked about last week, who his obituary stated that he wrestled in the WWF for over 15 years, and then we couldn't find any evidence of him ever wrestling in the WWF, which whatever. For those unaware, Hangman Harris would later on be better known as Black Bart. He currently, and topical as anything here, I guess, currently has stage 4 cancer. His wife Linda is currently running a GoFundMe to raise money for his treatments. She states that the doctors say that it's not curable, but it is manageable. So if you can donate and you want to donate, go check that out, and send some money to the family's way to, try to keep it manageable anyway. So Akbar isn't in Harris's corner. General Skandar Akbar isn't here. Harris has stated that he is not a member of Skandar Akbar's army. He was just someone whose services were bought last week. Hangman worked the neck. At one point, he used the Great Khali hanging tree slam before submitting Hudspeth with an over-the-shoulder Hangman submission hold. And there's another one of those screwy referee finishes where he never rang the bell, or he didn't signal to ring the bell. He just made Harris break the hold. And so Watts, who wasn't sure what happened, was talking about how, they might have seen that it was a choke and, they're breaking the hold, but then the referee rings the bell showing it was a submission. They need to get these referees under control here because this is you know, poor officiating the last few weeks here. We then get our big title match. It is the North American champion Bob Roop defending against the Louisiana champion Junkyard Dog. Junkyard Dog also half of the tag team champions with Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia is also the Mississippi State champion. So if Dog wins here, they will have every title in Mid-South between the two of them. So can he do it? Dog really wants his title today. He's out with a flurry to start the match, slamming Roop off of the ropes and then using a standard slam. Roop with the most telegraphed power slam of all time, but JYD punches him in the face instead. Roop finally takes over by draping JYD's throat on the top rope to take over. And as you might notice, we haven't had a lot of audio here, so I'm going to play this thing here, showing what a great job Bill Watts is doing at commentary.
What a physique inside that muscular body, Bill, and he's a top drawer in professional wrestling box office attraction all over, and everywhere he goes, the fans in other cities are just finding out.
Boyd, you're just saying, too, how devious and cunning Bob Roop is. The thing about Bob Roop, he's got all the physical attributes. He's got the mental ability also to plan.
So, yeah, our good friend Bill Watts here, he doesn't even mute his microphone. He just coughs into the microphone. And then, so Boyd, being an actual good commentator, which, you don't say that a lot about Boyd, but yes, he actually is a good commentator at times, or at least a professional one anyway. And so Boyd starts talking to cover for it, and Bill just cuts him off mid-sentence, talks over him, and yeah. So let's go to the finish of the match. Junkyard Dog has exploded out of a lateral press, making Roop fly into the air in almost a comical degree. And let's go to the finish and the aftermath.
Family man, and the guy loves the sport, the business, the way to make his family the money and support him in a style, like he said, that he never had as a kid. And here the one-man gang, Boyd Pierce.
It is the one-man gang. It's a ring.
He's trying to do like he did to DiBiase. He's going to try to get the dog's leg, and the one-man gang just threw Alfred Neely out here. You can hear him thump clear across, and he's got the Junkyard Dog, and he's trying. Neely's calling for the bell, Boyd Pierce, but they're trying to wipe out the Junkyard Dog. Roop already has the title. He doesn't care about losing the match. Ernie Ladd just came with a chair. Ernie Ladd just came with a chair, and he's after the one-man gang. But Bob Roop is pulling the dog in. The dog, we don't know how bad that knee is. He has that bad knee from football. We don't know if the gang got him. Skandar Akbar on the scene, and Ladd's going after Akbar. The one-man gang was really hammered. The shoulder breaker by Bob Roop. Still, Bob Roop has a title. He doesn't care about the disqualification. He's trying to eliminate an opponent. DiBiase. DiBiase sacrificed himself. DiBiase sacrificed himself to save the dog. What a love. What a feeling between these great athletes that have a common enemy. Roop going for the high knee of the dog. The dog is howling. Boyd Pierce, the dog is unleashed. He's unleashed a fury. The back in the alley in the ghetto, like he said, fight for his life.
Fuming.
And he's trying to take, he's going to take Bob Roop. He's strangling him out there. The assassin and the grappler. The referee trying to hold back the dog. They're trying to pull, tug, pry Bob Roop away from the grasp of the Junkyard Dog. The Junkyard Dog is incensed. DiBiase, pandemonium, Boyd Pierce.
He is furious, and we'll be back. There will be more action after this word from Mid-South Wrestling.
There is more action on its way from Mid-South Wrestling, but before we get to that action, let's recap what we just saw, shall we? So Dog makes his comeback, and he hits the thump power slam. And as you heard, one-man gang runs in for the disqualification. He pulls DiBiase into the post. So it looked like what he was going for was what he did to DiBiase the first time, where, he slammed his knee into the post, injuring him. and is trying now to do it to the dog. But instead, Ernie Ladd meanders out and cracks him in the head with a chair. He cracks him a couple times with it. And Gang falls to the mat or falls to the ground. So in the ring, and this is where it gets a little wacky because he heard all the bell ringing, so the match was over. But Roop decided to go for a shoulder breaker, and he hits the shoulder breaker. He goes up top for the knee drop, but Ted DiBiase runs in and covers Junkyard Dog's body to protect Dog, to save Dog. He takes the knee drop himself instead of letting Dog possibly be injured. Further, continuing the story that, DiBiase here, he's a good guy. He's tired of other people getting injured, and he's tired of all this here. And the story continues of him going after the North American title. And Dog gets up, he clotheslines Roop down, he begins strangling him, and then the grappler and the assassin run in to drag Roop away. They are doing a tremendous job of basically splitting the top half of the company into two groups, even if they're not formally aligned, and this ends up leading, you get, especially when you have a territory like this where there's probably 20 full-time wrestlers, if that, in Mid-South. And so when you take 10 of them or 12 of them and you find ways to intertwine all their angles together, whether it's because half of them are with Akbar or are aligned to some degree, like Bob Roop is. And then you have all these baby faces who all have individual issues with a heel, who all happen to be on Akbar's side or all happen to be aligned with him in some way. It ends up with everything all intertwined, so you can do months, and as we've seen, because like a lot of this has been going on since January. You intertwine all these angles, all these storylines, and so you get months and months of essentially fresh matchups that you haven't seen or haven't seen much of. And it's still fresh because we haven't seen them 1,000 times, but it still is part of the large overreaching angle in the company. And it's something that it's like, I don't want to say that people these days are too lazy to do something like that. They may not be smart enough to run an overreaching angle of this sort. Like, if you want to say, like, Bischoff tried with the NWO, like, to that degree, but even that, it wasn't like Scott Norton, just pulling somebody out, not to diminish Scott Norton at all, but like, if Scott Norton went out and wrestled, I don't know, top babyface Sting, you know, it's not going to, like, Scott Norton isn't going to win or really be much of a competitive opponent for Sting. Whereas if you take whoever the number one babyface is, Junkyard Dog, versus whoever the number 5 heel would be, probably the Grappler. And I mean, I think we've had this match, but still, it's like, it's a competitive match where you believe that Grappler could win, because they have all these things set up that let you believe that, hey, JYD is great, but you have to be great in order to be in the ring with him too. And so you have all these people who are, they may be the number 5 heel, maybe number 10 on the depth charts, but number 1 on the depth chart should still be worried about number 10. Whereas, like, especially these days, you're not really, mind you, I don't think anybody really cares about wins and losses as much anymore. In fact, they really don't. But at the same time, John Moxley isn't doing a job on TV for Brian Pillman. I know it's a bad, comparison, because Brian Pillman, sorry, he's great. He's a very nice guy too, but he's also not the number 10 guy in the company. But you know what I mean here. Alrighty, so Grappler and Assassin went to the back, and then they walked right back out for our next match, as Grappler and the Assassin teamed up against Jesse Barr and Coco Samoa. Grappler and Assassin formed a team. I don't know how long it's going to last. We'll have to wait and see. But, a few weeks ago, Assassin was in that tag team match with One Man Gang. He went to the back, switched masks with Grappler, and Grappler came out to finish the match. And I guess they can't switch places with each other when they're teaming in the same match. Samoa and Bar are a popular duo, according to Boyd, despite the fact that they've never teamed before on this show. Bar took a fantastic beating here. And he just, Jesse Bar is the perfect size to be a jobber, to be a TV jobber. He's not big, but he's not too small. He's got an athletic body. It's not overly muscular. It's not flabby, and he's skilled enough in the ring where he takes a great beating and he looks good getting his butt kicked here. And that's what happened here. Bill Watts, for the second week in a row, brings up that Big John Studd and the Super Destroyer are wanting to come in and challenge Junkyard Dog and Mr. Olympia for the Mid-South Tag Team titles, and how Murdoch is on his way to Japan, and they're hoping to show footage of Murdoch from Japan if they can. Coco Samoa got the hot tag and got a 1 count off a leg drop, but pretty much immediately got pinned when Grappler hit his move that's basically a running skull-crushing finale. Yeah. We get our expiration of time match up next. Iron Mike Sharp versus Jim Starr. Jim Starr is sadly not related to Billy the Star Child Starr. Personally, I prefer to live in an alternate universe where Jim Starr and Billy Starr are related. Perhaps they could team up to wrestle the Storms, James, Lance, Tony, and many others. And both men are wearing plain black trunks, but Sharp is wearing his traditional, high-waisted control top briefs. And Bill has had so little to talk about in this match, because this match has almost 5 minutes before the end of the match. Bill decides to go off on his own little thing and plug a local company who helped him out of a jam a few weeks ago.
At Downtown Air Park in Oklahoma City, they just repainted my Aerostar November 6891 Delta, the end number, and they did a great job. And they certainly, one thing I appreciate is they'd had some problems with one of the paint jobs on it due to some environmental problems on the primer. And when I took it back for a look at it, and the paint job on a twin engine is an expensive situation, those guys said, Bill, it's our fault, and we stand behind our work. And they thought they're just going to have to touch it up. They called me and said, nope, we're going to have to completely redo it. And Boyd Pierce, in this day and age, nobody wants to stand up and back their product. And I got to say one thing, my hat's off to those guys. They did a fine job, stood behind their warranty and their reputation. And I want to mention that right here in front of everybody, because there's a lot of aircraft owners out there, and I want to say that the Downtown Air Park did a great thing for me.
Very commendable.
So, yeah, we are so lacking in audio this week that we get to play Bill Watts plugging the company that painted his airplane, because they did a fantastic job, and they didn't just touch it up, they repainted it when there was an issue with the primer. Isn't that great of that place that did that? Anyway, if you remember, Iron Mike Sharp was getting a decent little push for a while, and now he's not. And he's been on the losing end of things for a while now. And here, he has 5 minutes. And we've had a lot of expiration of time matches. In fact, we have one every week. And most have like 2 to 3 minutes. And every so often you get that, somebody gets a win, especially when you have a star in the expiration of time match. And that's what I figured would happen here, and I'm waiting for it, 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 and it has been, almost 40 years, 39 years, 11 months, and 1 week later. I'm still waiting, because Iron Mike Sharp could not defeat an enhancement talent in almost 5 minutes. This goes the time limit here in the expiration of time match. Mike Sharp cannot defeat Jim Starr. And so that's gonna do it for Mid-South for this week. It is setting the stage for an exciting summer. Let's, just say that for now. And so we move from that to weird news of the week. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is weird news of the week presented by nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And we go to UPI.com. We go to Ben Hooper, who this week has sent in massive Chicago River snapping turtle dubbed Chonkosaurus. A giant snapping turtle dubbed Chonkosaurus is becoming an online celebrity after it was caught on camera lounging on some rocks in the Chicago River. Joey Santor posted a video to Twitter showing the gargantuan amphibian he spotted enjoying the sun near Goose Island on the north branch of the Chicago River. Great to see this beast thriving here on what was once such a toxic river, but is slowly getting cleaned up and restored. Somebody planted a bunch of native plants up the river from here too. I can only wonder. I can only wonder this thing's been eating. Should be a what in there? Santor wrote. This massive snapping turtle was dubbed Chonkosaurus by locals. Santor estimates that the snapping turtle, believed to be a female, weighs at least 60 pounds. See, you never guess or say what a woman weighs, even if it's a giant snapping turtle. Come on here, Joey Santor. Biologists say Chonkosaurus appears to be 40 to 50 years old. So, isn't that nice? So that's going to do it for this week's show. Not a whole lot of audio. Believe me, we're going to make up for that next week. There's a lot to listen to and to break down next week. But that's for next week. This week was this week, and I hope you all enjoyed listening, or at least as much as I enjoyed doing these shows. We're at 40. Here's to the next 40. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again. By the way, check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project Friday. But until then, we will talk to you again after a while. Welcome to episode number 041 of Something Else with Arya, not KJ. My name is Arya, joined as always by not KJ, and flying solo like usual this week. Thank you all for listening, and today we are going to be talking about Mid-South Wrestling from June 10th, 1982. But thank you again for listening. Welcome to the show. It's a big show this week because, as promised last week, there are a lot of goings on, a lot of goings on, including me learning how to say that. And this show, this program, this Mid-South Wrestling, it is, in some ways, it's coming out of the blue, all of the stuff that's being set up. But in many ways, it's all stuff that's been built up since the beginning. It's been built up, especially since Bob Roop, screwed both Paul Orndorff and Ted DiBiase on that one episode of Mid-South, a few months ago. And, we are on the road to some more storyline progression, some more angles being shot here. And let's dive into this thing here first. First of all, thank you all again for listening. Check us out. Depending where you're listening to us, listen to us on multiple places, or check out the other options. We are available at tinyurl.com/somethingelsepod, angrymarks.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Overcast, Pod Paradise, Castro, Podbay.fm, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. Yes, these are all still real places. Also, please check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project that comes out Friday mornings. I've been really enjoying doing those shows. I hope y'all are enjoying listening to them. Check it out. It's on the same podcasting network that you find this lovely program. So if you don't have to subscribe to anything else, you don't have to go anywhere else, you don't have to pay anything. It is all a part of one big umbrella, the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project. Who is Ron Wright finally going to manage? Who is Jim Cornette's tag team? We're on the road to crowning our first Smoky Mountain champions and see what's going on this week over in Knoxville. But for now, we're in Shreveport, Louisiana. We're going back in the day. What is it? It's 39 years, 11 months, and 1 week ago. That's June 10th, 1982. And let's go to the intro with Boyd Pierce and his co-host this week, everyone's favorite co-host, Bill Watts.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce. Another outstanding card. A special challenge match headlines the card. 320 pounds, 6'9" The big cat Ernie Ladd takes on 454-pound one-man gang from the stable of General Skandar Akbar. All the top stars are here. Iron Mike Sharp, the Junkyard Dog, Bob Roop, the Assassin, the Grappler. You'll see them all, and you'll hear the expert description by our guest commentator, Cowboy Bill Watts. Bill?
Well, thank you, Boyd. It's always great to be here. And, I think a lot of things start simmering along about now, looking toward that big summer Superdome, July the 17th. And one of the things that really shocked me is Ted DiBiase apparently has really had it deep in his craw about the March 17th, the way he lost the North American title. And I can certainly sympathize with him, but I think it just finally blew up today. And earlier, he gave Grizzly Smith and Mid-South Sports an ultimatum, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, let's go to the ring to Iron Mike Sharp and Randy Bays, the first match.
All right, so you heard quite a bit in that 1 minute. First of all, it reiterates this week's big main event match, One Man Gang versus Ernie Ladd, which is quite the encounter. Can't wait to get to that here. Bill sneaks in that the next Superdome show is July 17th. And then he mentions that DiBiase has had something stuck in his craw since losing the North American title to Bob Roop back on March 17th. And so he gave Mid-South and Charlie Lay and Grizzly Smith an ultimatum, and we'll find out about that later. And an ultimatum, by the way, is where you ask for the whole tomato or else. So we got our first match. It is Iron Mike Sharp with his high-waisted control top briefs, one-on-one with Randy Bays. Last week, Sharp could not beat an enhancement talent in almost 5 minutes. So this week, to give him a chance, we're giving him the whole 60 minutes to see if he can pick up the win, finally snap his, winless streak that he's on here. And now, you might recall last week, Junkyard Dog challenged Bob Roop for the North American title. Junkyard Dog is already the Louisiana champion. He's already one half of the tag team champions. So if he would have won the North American title, he would have had 3 championship belts. And no one this side of Lance Storm is allowed to do that. So Bill Watts is going to inform us of a brand new rule that has been put down by Mid-South President Charlie Lay. And let's go to that right now.
Also a new ruling by Mid-South Charlie Lay, and stating a lot of complaints. Naturally, the people that complain are not the people that have all the accolades, but there's been some complaints by some wrestlers about the fact that the Junkyard Dog and Mr. Olympia hold both the Louisiana State heavyweight title, the Mississippi State heavyweight title, and the Mid-South tag title. And that brings up the situation that the North American Championship, if the Dog or Mr. Olympia would win that, they'd have all the titles on these 2 individuals. Well, Charlie Lay said that they can definitely hold individual titles and still wrestle as a tag team champions. However, if they would win, one of them would win the North American Championship, he would then have to forfeit his state championship to fulfill the obligations of the North American title. And you can certainly see why they couldn't undergo the strenuous scheduling of both the North American Championship and either the Louisiana or the Mississippi Championship. And I'm sure either one of those men, fine young champions that they are, would regret having to forfeit the state titles that mean so much to them, but they would certainly be moving up the ladder in the professional wrestling world by winning the North American title. But that's all conjecture at this point. And like I say, it all started by a bunch of guys hoping to win something by not beating anybody, I'm sure, and they would like to see. I've seen a title taken away from them, but that's just not going to happen in Mid-South.
So there you go. And mind you, this all makes total sense, even if, they kind of wackily described it here. Um, you know, we flat out get told, you can't have two singles championships. You can have a singles championship and the tag team championship because apparently, theoretically, it's easier to handle two schedules as champion if you have a tag team partner for one of them, which, at the very least, you can say, well, it takes half the load off of you. If you're, if you're in a tag team, you only have to do half as much work as if you're in a single, in theory. So it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't. But either way, we're establishing that you can hold a singles title and a tag team title, but you can't hold two singles titles. So if Junkyard Dog would have won the North American title last week, he would have had to forfeit his Louisiana title. And it makes you wonder why they didn't mention this last week, why Charlie Lay waited until this week to make that ruling. And, Mid-South, it's hilarious because I'm fairly certain we never see either of them on TV, but we now have two authority figures in matchmaker Grizzly Smith and Charlie Lay, the president of Mid-South Wrestling. And so, if we get any more, we're going to be at, TNA 2008 levels where everybody was an authority figure at the time. So Sharp hits a series of low drop kicks, but they weren't supposed to be low. He just got less height than John Tenta would on his drop kicks. Sharp finally wins the match with an over the shoulder backbreaker. This, I looked it up. This is Sharp's first TV win in 4 weeks. And at that time, that was his first win on TV in another 4 weeks. So in, 7 weeks, he's won 2 matches on TV and he's wrestled at least 6 times during that period. Despite what it sounds like, he's not finishing up and is actually around until March of '83. He leaves then to become the Iron Mike Sharp we all remember and love in the WWF. And according to Cage Match, he makes a one-off appearance next July on a TV taping. And I'm not saying I don't believe it. We'll see if that actually happens in 13 months or so. But, when I look at Mike Sharp's, Cage Match profile, he's wrestling in Pennsylvania the day before, flies in to wrestle on Mid-South TV, and flies back to Pennsylvania to wrestle on another house show that same night. I mean, it's possible, and I imagine it's not the wackiest 1980s story you're going to hear about traveling, but it's still a little excessive, if you ask me, especially, just to come in for one shot like he does, because it's not like when he comes back, he's back to, get a push, whatever. He's just back for one shot. So we go to commercial, we come back, and Bill Watts has joined us at the desk, or joined us at this. Bill Watts is taken over to the camera, and he's going to recap everything with Ted DiBiase, and then we're going to get to hear from Ted DiBiase in a dark room.
Well, boy, there's an old saying that still water runs deep. And, of course, Ted DiBiase, you and I have watched his career from when he was Rookie of the Year, and he battled such guys as Killer Carl Cox. And, of course, Dick Murdoch kind of took him under his wing and helped train him. And so Ted DiBiase cut his teeth on the toughest ones in the business. His dad was a tremendous professional athlete, a great amateur athlete who was fatally injured and died from an injury in the ring. So Ted knows that it's not going to be all picnics and easy living. It's tough and hard. When you see these guys here on television, it looks so great and so easy for them, but you got to realize the hours they put in the training, the traveling, they learn everything the hard way. Well, Ted, March the 17th, was defeated right here on television. He was supposed to wrestle Paul Orndorff for the North American title, but Orndorff's car apparently malfunctioned, or as we found out later, Bob Roop had a hand in it. But Orndorff, with Bob Roop, the man who designed the counter to the figure four, had also designed a plan to lift that North American title from Ted DiBiase, so that when Roop got Orndorff out of the picture, They executed the plan with General Skandar Akbar and the one-man gang, and Ted lost that title. Well, Ted's really been stewing, and he feels that Mid-South hasn't supported him. We've done all, as from the board meetings I've sat in on, and Grizzly Smith, everything's been done that can. Bob Roop is skillful at avoiding getting pinned down in the match, so it's certainly not all Mid-South's problem. But I understand an intense competitor like DiBiase and his desire, and it's all coming to a head, and today DiBiase shocked the wrestling world with this announcement he made to Grizzly Smith. Let's listen to that now.
On March 17th of this year, I was robbed of the North American heavyweight title right here on TV by Bob Roop, Skandar Akbar, and the one-man gang. And I felt sure at that time that Mid-South Wrestling would not let that decision stand. But they did. And I feel like it was one of the biggest rip-offs that ever come down the pike. But I didn't cry over that. I didn't gripe about it. I accepted it. I bit the bitter pill, and I went on, knowing that Mid-South Wrestling would stand behind me and give me ample opportunity to regain the North American title. Well, up until right now, I don't feel like that's been done either. And I'm serving notice right now here today to matchmaker Grizzly Smith that I've set a goal that within the next 2 weeks, right here on this television, I get a North American title shot with a no disqualification clause. If I don't get the shot, I'm going to leave Mid-South. And if I get the shot and I don't win the title, I will also leave Mid-South for good.
Well, Boyd, there you have it from an intense young man, Ted DiBiase, and you're getting his feelings right from the heart. I don't think Ted is trying to be flippant about it, and he's certainly not trying to be overbearing. What it is he's letting Mid-South know just how deeply he feels about it, and so he's given them an ultimatum that he's set a schedule that he wants within 2 weeks, a no disqualification match for that North American title. He'd like to do it right here on television where the whole country can witness it, and he hopes to cut the outside interference. But he's also said that if you give me that match and I can't beat the guy fair and square, then I'll leave. I'll pack my bag and go. And I think that statement is almost an exclamation point, and I know Grizzly Smith is certainly considering that. We'll find out more about it later in the show today. Let's go to the ring now and Reeser Bowden.
All right, so you heard it. Ted DiBiase, he is tired of not getting fair shots at the North American title. He thought that they would reverse the decision after the, backhanded way that Bob Roop backdoored into the title. He thought they reversed the decision. They didn't. He thought that they would get ample opportunity to get the title. He feels like he hasn't. And I mean, like we've said, if you look over the results of the live events, the house shows, Roop spent all of May wrestling Paul Orndorff. And, I don't remember at this moment what happened in April. It probably was more Orndorff. And so DiBiase really hasn't gotten a whole lot of shots at the North American title. And so he's understandably upset because it's now been 3 months. He's been back from his injury for 2 months. And he is being looked over for title shots. Like just last week, Junkyard Dog got a title shot. Why didn't Ted get the title shot? And now he's given us an ultimatum where he wants a no DQ title match within the next 2 weeks. And if he does not get the title shot, he's going to leave Mid-South. And if he does get the title shot, but he loses, he will also leave Mid-South, which, this is territory wrestling, and people tend to come in and out all the time. And so DiBiase's been here for well over a year. It might be time for him to wrap up things up. Roop is a very competent champion, and he's a fantastic heel, as we talked about, for the top of the cards here. And so I guess we're going to see what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Actually, we're going to find out, in the next hour, like, is, Grizzly Smith going to go along with it? Is he going to give DiBiase his match? So we then go to our next match. It is Ted DiBiase versus Mike Bond. After weeks of wearing all black, DiBiase debuts light blue tights with a matching satin ring jacket. It's the same blue as, Roddy Piper and Jim Duggan's tights, which, thankful he didn't wear in the WWF because we didn't need another person wearing the same exact tights. DiBiase is more aggressive than usual. Dick Murdoch, who's Ted DiBiase's friend, is visiting, and I quote, Hong Kong, Japan, and Dubai. I forgot to actually look up to see if he actually is wrestling in other places than Japan. I'll do that during the next audio clip, or at least I'll try to. DiBiase hit drop kicks that were much better than the ones that we saw in the opener with Iron Mike Sharp. And DiBiase picks up the win on his way towards a hopeful title match with a power slam. So speaking of the North American heavyweight champion, Bob Roop, he's out here next. And before he takes on our favorite wrestler who's in the WWF for over 15 years, Mike Hudspeth, he has something to say about Ted DiBiase's Ultimatum. Let's go to that right now.
Well, Boyd Pierce, Grizzly Smith had asked Bob Roop his opinion of Ted DiBiase's Ultimatum, and we'll join Bob Roop and Reeser Bowden in the ring for this next match. But first, let's hear the brief comments Bob Roop made and then directly to the ring.
Ted DiBiase, pack your bags. Grizzly Smith told me you gave him a 2-week ultimatum. You either wrestle me, win the belt, or whatever, you're going to leave. You want a no DQ match? Well, listen, to get rid of you, I would beat up my own mother. And all I have to do is beat you again. Remember, I'm the one that put you out for 6 weeks. I'll beat you anywhere, anyway. I'm the man with the plan. I'm the one. Give me the rules. I'll figure out a way to beat you. Pack your bags, DiBiase.
So Roop would beat his own mother up to get rid of Ted DiBiase. I wonder if Bob Roop's mom knows that all about that. But oh well, we'll possibly find out that to go in the future. So I pulled up Dick Murdoch's profile on Cage Match, and let's see here. I'm going through everywhere he wrestles during his period away. Japan, 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 Japan. Japan, 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 Japan. Yeah, he's there for 2 months and he never wrestles a single match in Hong Kong or Dubai. It's all Japan. And by when I say all Japan, I mean it's all in Japan. He wrestles for New Japan. And yeah, he is back in August. So hope you enjoyed Dick Murdoch for now. He's, out for the next 2.5 months. But then he sticks around through at least the end of the year. And that's, I'm going to keep digging because I got a lot to talk about this week. We move on here with Bob Roop, the North American Heavyweight Champion, against Mike Hudspeth. This is a non-title match because Mike Hudspeth's 15 years in the WWF, as we mentioned, there's no record of him ever wrestling the WWF, and an 0-2 record here on TV were not enough to earn him a title match. Roop here is more aggressive than usual. As we've noted in the past, Roop tends to sell for like 90% of a match before somehow squeaking out a win. And in fact, he even says it in his promo, give him the rules and he'll find a way to win. He'll find a way to bend them. He'll find a way to manipulate them. And he does a very good job at that. And it's one of the reasons why I love Bob Roop. I know a lot of people don't. I think he's a tremendous heel and a tremendous, main event champion. And I've been really enjoying watching him wrestle here. Roop, as I mentioned, more aggressive. Roop won with a flying knee and a leg drop. I don't think our old friend Mike Hudspeth got in a single offensive maneuver. Oh, darn. Poor Mike. Bill recaps what happened last week where the one-man gang cost Junkyard Dog the North American title. Ernie Ladd came out and drilled him with a chair. And then Ted DiBiase took a bullet for Junkyard Dog when Roop went for a top rope knee drop. So they show all that again. Then we come back and Bill Watts is going to recap that. And then he's going to pitch it to him interviewing Junkyard Dog, but as you'll see, it's more him cutting a promo and Junkyard Dog gets in a few words. It's like watching Smoky Mountain and Tim Horner is yapping away for 90 seconds of a 2-minute promo. Except this is actually good. So let's go to that right now.
Believe you me, Ernie Ladd and Ted DiBiase have been victims. They've been there. Thank goodness for that for the Junkyard Dog. But now you understand what DiBiase is so upset. But also the Junkyard Dog is upset because he realizes it's now a battle for survival. And I questioned the Junkyard Dog earlier about what his plans were concerning the title, plus some other statements he made. Let's go to that interview, and then we'll go direct to the ring to watch the fabulous one, the Junkyard Dog, in action.
Well, JYD, at Mid-South, the North American title has either been a blessing or a curse to many people, depending on how you look at it. And we've seen the power and the prestige and the income earned off of it either corrupt a lot of people or bring a lot of people to the heights of their ability. I've never thought that a title as such was what motivated you. You seem to be around me and everybody else. It seems that your family's first, that you do love this business, and that you always go out and give 100% for the people and for yourself. But after what happened last week with Bob Roop, when they had the one-man gang come in and try to do to you what they did to DiBiase and possibly re-injure your bad leg and put you out of wrestling, knowing you that a good defense is a great offense, how do you feel about the North American title situation?
Well, Bill, you know I'm a very slow and methodical type person. I fought for everything I ever had, and that's for the incident that happened on television last week with the one-man gang and Roop. I've never been the type person to chase anything. I always waited for the opportunity to knock at my door. But now, Bob Roop, I'm knocking, and I'm going to come in.
Well, I think that serves warning to Bob Roop, and I think that's the way you got to get rid of them, is take their titles and their prestige away from them. But you also heard Ted DiBiase, and the title thing is really getting to him because the way it was taken from him. Certainly I can sympathize with him, as can you. What do you think about his statement?
Well, you know, I've never been the type of person that boxed myself in, and I feel very bad because DiBiase is boxing himself in. He's a family man, and, you know, he one of the very personal friends I have, but I think he's going about the wrong way by boxing himself in a situation like that.
Well, only time will tell on that. Another thing, Junkyard Dog, that Charlie Lay and the Board of Directors of Mid-South have passed a ruling. It's seemingly enforcing division of titles because you hold one half of the Mid-South tag title, you also hold the Louisiana title, and your partner, Mr. Olympia, holds the Mississippi title. And they've stated that the North American title is a regional title and can't be tied to one state, as is the tag titles. And if somebody, either you or Mr. Olympia, should win the North American title, you would have to vacate your state title, although you would still be able to compete as tag team champions. How do you feel about that ruling?
Well, I know the Louisiana title means a lot to me. The people here in Louisiana have been very, very lenient towards me, and they helped me a whole lot. But if I get the opportunity to wrestle Bob Roop for the North America, then if I get the opportunity to win the North America, I still would like to represent the people throughout the world, because that North American title will take you all over the world, and I would cherish and honor that North America just as much as I do the Louisiana. And I actually hate to have to vacate the Louisiana title, because they represent the people here in Louisiana, the state of Mississippi. But then again, if I am fortunate enough to win that North American title, if I get the opportunity, then I can represent the people here in Louisiana all over the world.
Well, thank you, JYD. And, of course, that's conjecture at this time. But when you're talking to Junkyard Dog, it seems like whatever he sets his goals, he's able to accomplish it. We'll just have to see as time goes by.
All right. So that was a lot, really not saying a whole lot in, this situation here. So ultimately, Junkyard Dog thinks that Ted DiBiase is doing himself a disservice by going for a stipulation where if he loses the match, if he even gets the match, if he loses, he will have to leave Mid-South Wrestling. Junkyard Dog, and he goes on and they talk again about Charlie Lay's new ruling where you can't hold the North American title and a state title. And they really drill it home. It makes you wonder, why are they repeating this so much? Why are they shoving this down our throats? I mean, obviously it's so you remember it, but it's almost like there's something going on in the world of Mid-South Wrestling right now. Anyway, so Junkyard Dog, and who knows, maybe they gave him the chance to cut his own promo and it did not go very well, because you heard him, especially at the end there, when he's having to cover more than one topic, he's kind of stuttering by the end. He's not, it's not the most coherent promo you'll ever hear on pro wrestling. I thought it got the job done, but I get it. Um, and we then go to our next match. It is Junkyard Dog, who as mentioned is Louisiana champion and one half of the tag team champions, against Billy the Star Child Star. Dog heaves Star with a body slam. I don't think his body even bent at all when he threw Star, because I don't want to spoil anything for you fine people listening to this program, but wrestling isn't real, and you're not really trying to hurt people. And I know just last week I talked about how, they were killing the business by having Dick Murdoch come out, with no problems 20 minutes after he got hung over the top rope in front of the same audience. But yeah, it's like, you take care of each other, guys. So Dog heaves Star down onto the mat. Dog got a near fall off of a chin lock. And you might be wondering how a human being gets a near fall off a chin lock. Well, it's really simple. He had him in a chin lock and then basically jumped on him to make the cover. Didn't work. Chin lock, not a great, move to lead to a pinfall. Anyway, Dog won with the thumb. Let's go to Reeser being Reeser to introduce our very next match here.
And now a special challenge match between two very big men.
Reeser being Reeser. If we ever stopped watching Mid-South, I would miss that guy. And I don't know how long he lasts. I don't know if he's there till the bitter end. But, he's just tremendous, more so than pretty much any other ring announcer you're ever gonna see or hear. So we got our Battle of the Big Men here. It is one man gang with General Skandor Akbar versus Big Ernie Ladd. Now I want you to imagine, sit back in your recliner, in the seat in your car, at work, wherever you're listening to this fine program. I want you to imagine for 1 second what you think a match between 1982 Ernie Ladd and the one man gang would be like. Now I want you to forget that, because the match starts with Ernie Ladd running across the ring and attacking Gang. Gang with some fast-paced clubbering here. I'm sorry, Ladd with some fast-paced clubbering. Gang used a back body drop of all things. Bill Watts calls Ernie Ladd Big E, and hopefully Ladd didn't have to break his neck in this match. Well, that back body drop was kind of brutal here. And shockingly, the match slows down after about 90 seconds, but the match doesn't go much longer than the 90 seconds, as the debuting Killer Khan runs in for the disqualification, attacking Big Ernie Ladd. Killer Khan, who Bill Watts kept calling Killer Khan the Mongolian, super kicked Ladd, who went flying out of the ring. And then him and Gang took out several enhancement talents running in for the save. So it was both everything you'd expect a match between one man Gang and Ernie Ladd to be, and nothing at all like you'd expect a match between one man Gang and Ernie Ladd to be. Rick Hangman Harris versus Tony Torres. As we mentioned last week, Rick Hangman Harris, also known as Black Bart, he is undergoing cancer treatments. His wife has set up a GoFundMe, so head on over there if you can and if you want to, and make a donation to help him out. Former enhancement talent Rick Ferrara has moved from a wrestler to a referee and is the third man in the ring for this one. At one point, the camera is zoomed in on the action, quote unquote, but there's a woman just behind them on camera who has her eyes closed, and you would be convinced is sleeping except her jaw is moving up and down because she's chewing gum. It's announced that next week our North American champion Bob Roop will be doing guest commentary, and it's being announced that Grizzly Smith has announced that Ted DiBiase will get a no disqualification match with Roop. However, Grizzly right now is trying to get that scheduled within DiBiase's timetable. It's not a guarantee yet, but he's doing his best, and we're going to see what happens. Also next week, speaking of titles, Junkyard Dog defends the Louisiana title against the Grappler. Hey, remember last week when I was talking about like the #1 babyface and the #5 heel? Like, here we are. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Harris wins with his Hangman submission hold. Tag team action, it is the Assassin and the Grappler versus Jesse Barr and King Cobra. So after Jesse Barr lost the tag team match with Coco Samoa last week, he trades in Coco Samoa for King Cobra, who has a long career. He wrestles as early as 1976, and when you look at his cage match, he seems to like not even just bounce around, because he's like the legitimate definition of a journeyman, but he doesn't wrestle too long consecutively. Like he'll wrestle 3-4 months, and then he won't have any more matches for another 3 or 4 months. And it's just, he's got a long career. He wrestles until, his last match was in 2009, but that seemed to be more of a, last retirement match type thing, or coming out of retirement thing. And he's got a weird 1982. We're going to see him quite a bit, but at the same time, he is literally bouncing back and forth between here and Memphis. And like, you'll see him for a month or so. He'll leave us for 6 to 8 weeks, come back for 6 to 8 weeks, go back to Memphis for 6 to 8 weeks, just back and forth, back and forth. And hey, if you can make a career, if you can make a living out of it, good for him. This match that Bill Watts, the legitimate booker of the show, has decided that he is going to get up and leave to go see Ernie Ladd, to see how Ladd is doing, and to see if Ladd will come out and do and talk to the crowd if there's still time left at the end of the show. Not sure if Boyd was aware that that was going to happen, because he certainly played it up like he didn't know. Boyd had nothing to say, and Bill must have figured that out in 30 seconds, or Ernie Ladd was easy to find, because 30 seconds later, Bill is back on the headset, and he announces that if there's time, because this is the expiration of time match, if there's time, Ernie Ladd is going to come out and talk to the people. Good news, there was time, because Assassin pins Barr with a headbutt, and I should note that before Assassin hit Barr with a headbutt, Assassin hit King Cobra with a headbutt, and King Cobra blocked it with his head. Yep. Not even going to go into that one there. So let's go now to Ernie Ladd's promo at the end of the show.
Roy Pierce, let me tell you something. I have never been blindsided. I have never been blindsided like this. Watch, we've had our differences and everything else, but I've been blindsided like this. Never like this in football before. I've had all type of injuries, but the thing about it, they didn't put me out. When you stay in shape, you're tough, and you're ready to come back. I'd like to get this man Khan. Is it any way possible? I like to get Khan anywhere, anytime. I always get the man that get Ernie Ladd. Akbar pulled another trick of his, but it's one thing about it. He didn't put me out.
Well, Ernie, it certainly shows that Akbar learns by other people's maneuvers, because a few short months ago, you had a man stashed and suckered in the Samoans and put him on the run. And so it seems like the Akbar, the one thing about him being so devious and having the money that he has, he can reach out and he's repaying you in kind, and he is a dangerous opponent.
Well, one thing I got to say, it's like a chess game. It's who got the most marks in the end. I don't plan to go down again. Akbar's a loudmouth. He's backed this stuff up. I'm a loudmouth. I'm backing mine up. All I can say, if I can get some of Akbar's people, because somebody's got to be hurt, somebody has to go to the hospital.
Ernie,
Thank
you'll
you a
have
lot.
to talk with matchmaker Grizzly Smith, like we've always says on Mid-South Wrestling. Our time is gone. A lot of exciting action. We'll have more next week. Remember the Louisiana Heavyweight title on the line, the Junkyard Dog versus the Masked Grappler. Apparently in 2 weeks we'll have that match. Ted DiBiase versus Bob Roop, one fall, no disqualification. We'll talk to Bob Roop next week as he'll be our guest commentator. Till then, for our guest commentator this week, Cowboy Bill Watts, I'm Boyd Pierce, saying goodbye, everybody, from Mid-South Wrestling Television Network.
So yeah, that some more information on that is even more than just Ernie Ladd talking and how he still wants to get at Skandor Akbar, and now he wants, Killer Khan. And of course, Boyd Pierce, being Boyd Pierce, is going to sit there and say, you got to talk to, matchmaker Grizzly Smith. Boyd Pierce can't do anything about it, but they do announce at the end of the show in 2 weeks, Ted DiBiase will challenge Bob Roop for the North American title. And if Ted DiBiase does not win the title, he is going to leave Mid-South Wrestling for good. And what will happen in 2 weeks? I guess we'll have to find out when we get to episode number 043. But before that, we have to get to episode number 042. And before we get to that, we have to go to Weird News of the Week. That's right, folks. It's Weird News of the Week presented by Nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. Now, before I go into this, I gotta, talk about how, 5 or 6 years ago, my friend and I went to Australia. And anytime we tell people we went to Australia, pretty much without fail, we constantly hear about how, oh my God, there are giant snakes, there are giant bugs, there are giant reptiles. Forgetting that there are snakes and bugs and reptiles everywhere, but apparently Australia just has that reputation where if you want to get a giant bug or snake or whatever, go to Australia. And I pointed out that at no point during my trip to Australia did random giant snakes or bugs pop out and attack us. So we go to UPI.com with our old friend Ben Hooper to let us know big python removed from wheel well of car in Queensland parking lot. Queensland being a state in Australia. An Australian snake catcher called to remove a snake from the wheel well of a car in Queensland was shocked to see the size of the big python. Stuart McKenzie of Sunshine Coast Snake Catchers 24/7 posted a video to Facebook showing the unusual rescue he conducted when he was called about a big python seen slithering into the wheel well of a car in a parking lot. The video shows McKenzie carefully extracting the snake from its hiding spot. Geez, not a bad size. That's a very decent size, bigger than I was expecting, McKenzie says in the footage. The snake catcher said the size of the serpent was helpful in the capture. Look at the size of it. This is a big snake, McKenzie says in the video. It's usually not that easy to get them out of cars, but thankfully I reckon this guy's too big that he couldn't get past where he was sitting. McKenzie transported the snake to a wilderness area where it slithered up a tree. I'm so glad I was able to get him out of the car, and I'm glad the people obviously notified the person whose car it was before he drove off, as that would have been an absolute disaster, McKenzie says. All right, so now that I've got everyone checking in the wheel wells of their car to see if there's any giant snakes hiding there, we're going to wrap things up. So things are moving on here with Mid-South Wrestling, and we'll see what happens next week when we turn to Shreveport. Check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project every Friday. Let's see what's going on in Knoxville in 1992. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week. to episode number 042 of Something Else with Arya and not KJ. My name's Arya, and welcome to the show. Today we are going to be discussing a an excellent, I'd say, episode of Mid-South Wrestling from June 17th, 1982. We're going to be back with Weird News of the Week, and I'm even going to give you some thoughts on a little bit of Double or Nothing, which, as I'm taping this, was last night. And as you know, it's being posted as last night. But first, again, thank you all for listening. And I want to remind you of the 8 million ways that you can listen to the dulcet tones of my voice right now. We are available, of course, on tinyurl.com/something-else-pod, angrymarks.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Overcast, Pod Paradise, Castro, Podbay.fm, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. And yes, as we say every week, yes, these are all real places. That's the joy about Something Else. Not only are we available on all your favorite streaming platforms, we're available on the ones you've never heard of. And the weird thing is, whether it's due to me or not, people have heard of those other platforms because I get the numbers and people do listen to the show on some of those odd platforms that at least I'd never heard of until, hey, my show started popping up on there. But alrighty, just a reminder, please check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project. Comes out every Friday, where we watch Smoky Mountain Wrestling beginning in February of 1992. And we're going to go all the way to episode number 200 in November of 1995. This past week was episode number 5 from Leap Day 1992. Go check it out. And remember, you do not have to subscribe to something different. By subscribing to Something Else, you not only get this, the weekly Something Else episode where we talk about Mid-South Wrestling and other stuff, you also get the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project every Friday. So please check it out. Please subscribe. Tell other people about it. It's how we're going to grow. And, the numbers are promising, they're going up little by little, and that's great. I hope anybody who's listening is enjoying it, and I hope you continue to enjoy this week's episode. Now, as I mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about Double or Nothing. I was originally supposed to go to the show, but things happened, and I wasn't able to make the trip happen. I didn't watch the entire show last night. The only match I watched was the Anarchy in the Arena match. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of the match. That's not to say that it was like that any of the 10 people involved didn't all do a fantastic job. And, it worked well enough for what it was. It's just, I personally didn't enjoy it. I thought there were parts of it that were just a little too much. And honestly, and maybe I was just blissfully ignoring something in front of my face, I didn't think the fans were that into it. And then the finish was Konosuke Takeshita turning heel, costing Kenny Omega the match, and aligning himself with Don Callis. And people are going to sit here and say, and I'm sure they have, and I haven't really listened to any podcast talking about the show yet, at least as of this moment, but I'm sure people have pointed out, oh, well, they did all this stuff with Don Callis and Takeshita for months. And here's the thing, and AEW has a history of doing this. They build up a heel turn, or they build up an alliance, they build up something for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they drop it cold. And that's what happened here. Because if you remember, it's like, yeah, Don Callis was every so often seen with Takeshita. And then it's like about a month ago, you never saw it again. And then it was like all of a sudden, oh yeah, Takeshita. Remember when Don Callis was talking to him all those times months ago? And this isn't the first time this has happened. I remember when Powerhouse Hobbs, original heel turn a few years ago, they spent a month or two with Taz and Team Taz trying to recruit Will Hobbs. Will Hobbs just debuted or re-debuted or however you want to phrase it. And, Taz really wanted him on Team Taz and Will Hobbs was turning him down. And then it just dropped for over a month until Will Hobbs finally showed up and turned heel. It's like a lot of the stuff, it's like, and someone's going to sit here and say, well, this is great storytelling. It's like, I don't think it's great storytelling when, you know, stuff just stops being mentioned, you know, and that's something that drives me a little crazy with AEW. Because I remember, another example, the Kenny Omega Hangman Page feud for the world title. It's like, oh, this is great storytelling because Hangman Page lost the first AEW title match 2 years earlier. And Omega and Hangman were tag team champions, and they fell apart, and this and that. And the fact is, it's like, that would be something if this was something you got reminded of periodically. You didn't have to do it every single time Hangman was on screen. But hey, remind you every couple weeks, every month or so. Hangman is the guy that lost the first world title match to Chris Jericho. No, that was never brought up ever again until 2 years later when he's wrestling for the world title again. And it's like, oh, look at this great storytelling. Look at this great angle. It's gone on for 2 years. It's like, no, that's not how that works. It's just, AEW needs to tighten these things up in a lot of ways. They're, and I'm going to get lambasted for this one, I'm sure. In a lot of ways, they're like WCW and TNA. Listen to me for a second. When great moments happen in WCW or TNA, you heard about them once, you may have heard about them twice. I think like the biggest TNA moment, like the one that got repeated the most, I think, was the Elix Skipper cage walk Hurricanrana. But the fact is, TNA had crazy moments like that a lot, especially in that first 5 years, but they never replayed them. They never slammed them in your head so you remember. WWE takes the most mundane stuff and shows it to you over and over and over and over and over and over again to the point where it's a memorable moment because you've seen it now 1,000 times. If Hogan slammed Andre and the next day they showed it on Primetime Wrestling and then never showed it ever again, no one would. I mean, the people would remember it would be someone like me who remembers everything, and that's about it. Instead, you see Hogan slamming Andre pretty much every year, at least once or twice. It's a big moment, and that's something AEW needs to do too. It's like, make people remember this stuff. Like AEW, it's like, read the Observer. Every week on Dynamite, you're having a 4-star match. Can you remember any of them a month later? Probably not. Now, that's not to say the matches weren't great when they happened. It's to say that AEW doesn't do a great job of making their stuff memorable. They don't do a great job of reminding you of things. Instead, it's like they bank on you listening to me right now. They bank on you remembering this. So when they reference it in 2 years, you're like, oh yeah, that was great. But if you're not sitting here with the memory bank of me, who remembers everything except the stuff I don't, uh, you know, you're you end up with some confused fans. And I'm not saying that's why the ratings are down a little bit. I'm not saying that's why attendance is down a little bit. I'm not saying any of that crap. I'm saying it's like, you know, give people, give memorable moments a chance to become memorable. Don't just give them memorable moments and just expect everyone to remember them forever. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So now we move on to Mid-South Wrestling from June 17th, 1982, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Last week, if you remember, here on Mid-South, Ted DiBiase gave us an ultimatum where if he did not get a no disqualification North American title match within 2 weeks, he would leave Mid-South Wrestling. And if he gets the match and loses, he will leave Mid-South Wrestling. And thankfully, matchmaker Grizzly Smith was like, hey, we don't want you to leave. So we're going to put you in that match. And it's next week, as we're speaking right now. We got a 2-week build for this big, North American no DQ title match against Bob Roop. On a completely unrelated note, it was stipulated that one man could not simultaneously hold two singles titles. What a completely random thing to bring up last week and now again this week. Why do I keep mentioning that? Anywho, let's go to the intro of the show with Boyd Pierce and his guest commentator this week, the North American Heavyweight Champion, Bob Roop. And they're going to go over what we're going to see today. And we're also, I'm sorry, I thought we were going to get another promo. Never mind. So it's just Boyd and Bob right now.
Now at Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. I'm your host. I'm Boyd Pearson. We have a lot of exciting action signed by matchmaker Grizzly Smith. The Louisiana Heavyweight Championship will be on the line as the Junkyard Dog defends his title against the challenge of the Masked Grappler. Also, Steve Dr. Death Williams, who gave two tremendous matches as he started his professional career right here on Mid-South Wrestling. He'll be back. Ted DiBiase will be in action. The Big Cat Ernie Ladd. Lots of great wrestling matches coming up. Our guest commentator of the week is North American Heavyweight Champion Bob Roop. Bob, you're a man of great controversy. In fact, there's not one but two top men, and I reiterate, top men in the world that are after you and your North American Heavyweight title. That's in the form and fashion of the Junkyard Dog and Ted DiBiase.
Well, boy, that's true. It's only fitting that the top people in the country and the world should be after me, because with this title, I am the #1 heavyweight in the country. I can handle the competition. I've always been able to. I'm the man with the plan. But I'd like to say this. People have talked in the past about me being a controversial, saying I break the rules. I've noticed that Ted DiBiase recently is out here wearing his glove on his hand, saying something about his hand is hurt or something. Well, listen, I'm supposed to wrestle him next week. I'm going to wrestle him next week for this title. But before next week, I want that hand either x-rayed to make sure there's nothing in that glove, or I want that glove taken off there, and I mean, it's only fair. I'm not wearing any gloves or anything.
All right, and we'll get your comments as we go along. Right now, the first match is in the ring. Let's go for the introduction and research bout.
All right, so today, Junkyard Dog defends the Louisiana title against the Grappler. And we have Dr. Death, we have Ted DiBiase, and Ernie Ladd all in action today. And then Boyd reiterates to Bob Roop that there are not just one, but two top men who are after the North American title. I'm just happy they weren't two bottoms or two switches. They were two top men. Does that make Bob Roop a bottom? All right, so yeah, now that I'm done making those references, Roop says he can handle all the competition since being the North American champion makes him the best wrestler around. And specifically, this is something, honestly, I guess I didn't even notice, but I should have been mentioning. So Ted DiBiase's been wearing a glove on his hand to protect a alleged hand injury. And so Bob Roop is pointing out, hey, he wants this thing examined. He wants to see if there's a foreign object inside. He wants proof that this guy's actually injured, and if not, he needs to have his white glove removed. And so that's going to be a subject throughout this episode. And then we get our first match. It is the third professional match of Dr. Death Steve Williams, adorned with University of Oklahoma bathrobe, going one-on-one with Mike Bond. Roop said that if he was to get in the ring with Dr. Death, he would tie him up and slap him around a bit. Williams uses his power to get out of Bond's headlocks. And this was another basic bout by Dr. Death. And we talked about this already because, again, this is his third professional match. Not many people's first handful of professional matches get broadcast on television and then get talked about and broken down 30 years, 40 years later, on podcasts. But that's what happens here. I will say that, you can see Williams getting better. And even if it's little things like he learned to run the ropes a little bit better. Because the last couple of weeks I brought up KJ and how him and KJ had something in common, that when they ran the ropes, they hit it with too much hip because you're supposed to like go kind of against your lats versus, you've seen people run ropes. If you watch wrestling, you know what it's supposed to look like. And, Dr. Death was kind of leaning in sideways into it. Or as our trainer would say, he was using too much hip. He's honestly a lot better than Larry Higgins was. If you remember when I talked about how poor he was, and I guess because I said, hey, sometimes it takes some time to learn how to run the ropes, and Dr. Death is doing, in 3 weeks without much of an issue now, and Larry Higgins was just embarrassing himself week after week after week. So we had a lot of arm locks, hip tosses, and arm drags. It's your basic rudimentary match. It's the match you teach green guys in the first few matches to have. There's nothing super complicated. Williams is still hesitant. It's not like when you watch it, even if you watch it without commentary and not be reminded over and over again that these are his first few matches, you can obviously tell this guy's green. He's inexperienced. He's got a long way to go. And it's one of those funny things. It's like, we know he ends up being pretty damn good. And he has a really long career out of this. Because I think he went back to All Japan after the WWF a fail of a run, and the WCW run, quote unquote. So, he was wrestling into the 2000s. I'm fairly certain of it. So he picks up the win with the Oklahoma Stampede, or as Bob Roop's expert commentary called it, ooh. Speaking of Roop, after commercial, we come back to the desk and Bob Roop has something to say.
You're one of the best at your profession. I want to show I'm the best at mine in terms of brains. A while back, I carried Paul Orndorff for a while, and I was letting him use my brains with his muscles. And I found out he was just selfish and egotistical and thought only of himself, and I thought, why should I let him use my brains? I went ahead and made a fool out of Paul Orndorff, and then I went ahead and beat him and chased him off. So I know how to make people pack their bags, and I'm only saying this, not bragging, only saying this because of the fact I finally got Ted DiBiase where I want him. He has said he'll pack his bags. I didn't even have to say it.
All right, Bob. And on March the 17th, a match between Ted DiBiase and Bob Roop for the North American Heavyweight title. Let's watch it right now.
And hey, they went back and re-showed the match that, basically led to where we are right now, where Bob Roop won the North American title. It was the episode where it was supposed to be Paul Orndorff, but we found out later on that Roop had messed with Paul Orndorff's car, so Orndorff didn't get there till the end of the show. And Roop mentions that, he has the brains. Paul Orndorff was using him for his intelligence. Roop dropped him like a sack of potatoes, and here we are. They send us to that match. Hey, Mid-South Wrestling 3 months after the fact is still showing you replays of that match and that finish to remind you exactly what happened. So, just saying, it's not exactly like this is a new thing where you're telling somebody to try to remind you of stuff. This is, as old as wrestling, my friends. I don't think I ever mentioned this before, but when he won the title, Roop used like the worst looking figure four you've ever seen in your life. Everyone talks about Hulk Hogan's awful figure four, and don't get me wrong, Hogan's was shitty. However, Bob Roop's, it looked like he was going for the Texas Cloverleaf and instead of turning DiBiase over onto his stomach, he just fell backwards and began wrenching backwards over and over again. So they pitch to the replay of the finish of that match, and they come back to the desk, and Roop has more to say.
Never admitted before, but that picture, I guess I have to say that, yeah, that was really a dirty, nasty thing to do, but it worked, and I can say it now because there's nothing Mid-South can do about it. They can't take that title back. They can't give Ted DiBiase that 6 weeks he spent on his back. They can't give that back to him. So I can admit it now. Yeah, I did it. I am the champion.
Now let's hear what Ted DiBiase had to say.
First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want any of you wrestling fans out there to feel that Ted DiBiase has gotten too big for his britches or that I'm off on a big ego trip. It's just that I was unjustly robbed of the North American heavyweight title, and up until now I have not been given proper opportunity to regain that title. And I want to go on record as thanking Mid-South Wrestling right now for going ahead and giving me the opportunity that I want and I deserve to regain the North American title right here next week on television. I got a one-fall, no disqualification match with you, Bob Roop, for the North American heavyweight title. And Roop, if you could come out here next week and beat me in a no disqualification match without any other help from outside, no, I take that back, Roop. If I can't beat you in this match, I will pack my bag and I will leave Mid-South without any hard feelings because I've asked for this match and they've given me the opportunity. And about this hand, Roop, you're complaining about the hand. Well, you know why the hand is hurt. The hand is hurt because of you, and it is simply taped. There's a handball glove covering it to hold the tape on when it gets sweaty. And I would never, Roop, as you would insinuate, use this glove to cheat and use it for an unfair advantage over anybody because I'm not like you. So right here, Roop, next week, we're going to settle this thing once and for all.
Bob Roop, in the past in title matches or just in any kind of wrestling match, you've been known to connive and do different things that maybe a lot of people don't agree with, but this match has been signed for the North American heavyweight title with no disqualification against you or whoever happens to be the North American heavyweight champion in case you come up with another one of your super podges, and if he wins, he will be the North American heavyweight champion.
Well, Boyd, I used a subterfuge once. That was just to get this title because I needed to make my break. Since then, I've beaten everybody that came up against me. Like I said, I chased off Paul Orndorff. Ted DiBiase spent 6 weeks regretting the fact that I beat him for this belt. So, I mean, that's no problem. I'll be there, and, I mean, I'm going to send Ted DiBiase packing.
I still say you use super fudge. That's the word I like to use. Ted DiBiase is in the ring. Let's go for the introduction of the match.
So did anybody catch what Boyd Pierce said right there? He said to Bob Roop that Ted DiBiase would wrestle you or whomever the North American champion is. So interesting that they're planting the seed that, it's scheduled to be Bob Roop versus Ted DiBiase next week. But what, pray tell, is to happen if Bob Roop doesn't make it to the show next week as your North American heavyweight champion? Roop finally admitted, and I mean, he never really denied it, but he finally admitted that it was a dirty, nasty thing to do to not just, screw with Paul Orndorff, to take, the title by having one-man gang come down and injure DiBiase and all that fun stuff that happened 3 months ago. He admitted that it was a dirty, nasty thing to do, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. He won the title. There's no such thing as instant replay in pro wrestling. Ted DiBiase can't just pretend he wasn't injured for 6 weeks. We can't just, restart it. And the fact is, as I mentioned, Bob Roop is one of those wrestlers that most of the time you see him wrestle, he will sell for 99% of the match. And the gimmick is like, this is happening where it's like all these wrestlers are kicking his butt for, 19 minutes of a 20-minute match. And then Bob Roop wins because that's the gimmick. He's an intelligent man. He knows how to get the win in the end, and that's all that matters. And that's what Ted DiBiase has to put up with next week, because this is the climax of an angle that's been going on since December. The first show we watched back in December was, Bob Roop and Paul Orndorff have developed a counter to the figure four of Ted DiBiase, and now they're going for the North American title. And now, here we are 7 months later, and this has been rammed down your throat this entire time. And now, here we go. The final battle of sorts. DiBiase wins the title or he leaves Mid-South Wrestling. DiBiase cut one of his better, more passionate promos that we've seen on this show. This was as close to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, that we all remember, than anything we've seen up to this point. He states that the glove is a handball glove with some tape on it. And unlike Bob Roop, he would never use it to make an unfair advantage. And Bob Roop basically said, I hope you pack your bags, Teddy. So up next, it's Ted DiBiase versus Billy, the Star Child Star. In addition to mentioning the fact that he's more $1 Million Man than he was, pre that, DiBiase's hair is growing a little bit. So he even is starting to have the hairstyle of the late 80s and early 90s Ted DiBiase. The only thing really missing is he doesn't have the beard. So DiBiase used a couple arm drags that Alfred Neely had to duck because Starr's legs almost kicked him in the head. Roop reiterates he wants the glove gone and points out if his hand is hurt, how can he wrestle? If his hand is hurt so bad that he needs to wear a protective device, how can he wrestle? And then, to add to it, Ted DiBiase, with the injured hand that requires a glove, is throwing chops with his injured hand that Bob Roop points out. How is he doing this if his hand is hurt so bad? So DiBiase wins with a power slam, and Roop admits that he's good, but he's not as good as Bob Roop is. We then get Killer Khan with General Skandor Akbar versus King Cobra. Roop, who, when the angle really didn't have anything to do with him, Roop was hit and miss on commentary this week. And this is one of those times. Roop said Khan used, and I quote, a variation of some kind of martial arts on Cobra, complete with the dramatic pause there. The fans must be blowing, the fans, the actual fans, not the people in the audience, but, the standing fans must be blowing pretty good here in June because Akbar is outside the ring and his headdress is blowing all over the place. And to be honest, watching that is more exciting than watching this match. We haven't mentioned him in a while, but our cowboy, Larry Dallas, is sitting next to a cowboy friend who at first I thought was Larry, but then I realized he's way too emotional and he's way too exciting of a caricature outside to be Larry. So I think it's safe to say we can call him Barry Dallas. And Barry was sitting next to Larry, and Barry was making the woman sitting on the other side of him laugh her head off. Cobra made a brief comeback, and Roop said that Khan was mad about being smacked around. I mean, we all would be, wouldn't we? Khan used a side Russian leg sweep and a knee drop from the middle rope for the pin. Then it was time for a title match for the Louisiana Heavyweight Championship at the Junkyard Dog versus the Grappler. There is a very white child in the audience dancing to Junkyard Dog's music. He is very white. Let's say if you put me on camera dancing, I'd look about as good as that. We're reminded that if this match does not go to the TV time limit, there are standby matches. I like to point out that there are over 20 minutes of time left without commercials when this match begins. So spoiler alert, this match does not go to the TV time limit. Boyd Pierce does a great job, especially considering, this wasn't the case when we started watching. But Boyd Pierce does a great job telling you that the grappler has held every single title in Mid-South except the Louisiana title. He's been the North American champion. He's been the Mississippi champion. He's been the tag team champion. And now he wants to complete the Grand Slam on Mid-South title belts. He wants the Louisiana title. Boyd reminds Roop that he has another challenger in the Junkyard Dog, and Roop pretty much blows him off from there. And this is what I mentioned, that I'm always defending Roop as being better than he gets credit for, but this was not one of his better days at the commentary booth. Grappler at one point tried to tie up the dog in the ropes, but it didn't work. I don't know if it was just a botch or just that's how it was meant to be, but he couldn't really tie up dog in the ropes. So I'm going to go to the finish now and a little bit of the aftermath. And then I'll be right back to talk about it.
Remarkable.
Ooh, the referee catched it. Alfred Neely caught it full. And the grappler, there on the other side. And in the ring, the only man is the champion, the Junkyard Dog.
Well, now the grappler, the grappler's getting ready to go back in the ring.
Alfred Neely on the cement floor, but it's not the grappler.
Grappler's getting back.
It's the masked assassin. The assassin, the Junkyard Dog. I don't know, but he realizes that it might still be the grappler because he just pulled him in from the apron.
Ooh, the grappler, the assassin. Oh no, he missed the kick. Junkyard Dog.
The assassin loaded up that forehead there, and now then, the Junkyard Dog. He realizes that it is not the grappler, Bob Roop.
Well, it's impossible. It's kind of hard to tell from here. Now that, whoever that was went out. That's the grappler. There's the grappler. Yeah, he was there the whole time, wasn't he?
Now
Power
the grappler's
slam.
back in the ring. Alfred Neely out. There's a
one-man gang.
The one-man gang entering.
I know what he's going to do. He's going to break his leg. He's going to wrap that leg around the post.
Alfred Neely called for the bell, and the one-man gang on the leg of Junkyard Dog, you recall 2 weeks
Look
ago
at
here.
Ted DiBiase running in that match interference.
Ted DiBiase. For the rest of you remember 2 weeks ago, the one-man gang grabbed Ted DiBiase and threw his leg against that steel post. There's your decision. Alfred Neely disqualifies for outside interference, and still Louisiana heavyweight champion, the Junkyard Dog.
Ted DiBiase should be suspended for interfering
We
in
still
matches
have
like
some
that.
time left, so we'll have more standby matches coming up after this word from Mid-South Wrestling.
Alrighty, so what happened here at the finish? Dog picks up Grappler for a back suplex, of all things, and Grappler accidentally kicks the referee. I guess Alfred Neely wasn't that fast that time. Grappler rolls out of the ring and in runs the assassin. And this is where they try to continue that Grappler and assassin look so much alike that, it's easy to confuse. One guy wearing just long tights and a white mask versus one guy wearing a full body suit and a yellow mask. And Lord knows nobody on this show has ever been fooled about that. Nobody. So Assassin loaded his mask and Dog punched him, but Dog punched the foreign object, so he had to sell his hand. Dog got the best of the Assassin. The Grappler got back in, but he got hit with a thump. One-man gang ran in, and this is where Alfred Neely woke up and disqualified the Grappler. And finally, Ted DiBiase ran in for the save as the heels bailed. And yeah, so here is once again, and we've mentioned this a few times, Ted DiBiase being the valiant babyface that he is, the good guy that he is. He has made the save now for Junkyard Dog twice, and that time that he ran in to help Ernie Ladd when Ernie Ladd was being beat down by one-man gang crew. So DiBiase, good guy here, and he's been helping Junkyard Dog quite a bit lately. So we'll see what happens from there. So it's time for our standby matches, and typically this is where we end the show in 2 minutes, but there's a little bit to talk about here. So first up, we have Rick Hangman Harris versus Jesse Barr. Barr has a heart-shaped tattoo on his bicep. I bet it says Moom on it with 2 O's. After the finish of the last match, Boyd wants to know from Bob Roop why Roop, who has comments and opinions about everything, didn't really have much to say about the end of that match.
Hold me in this kind of hole because
Bob Roop, you didn't pick up too much on the previous match for the Louisiana title when Alfred Neal, the referee, was out on the cement floor. Likewise was the Grappler, which was the challenger. You didn't say too much when the assassin came in and jumped in the ring, started on the champion, the Junkyard Dog, loaded up his hood, and then finally the Junkyard Dog realized who it was. Then here comes the one-man gang, came in and tried to work his leg over just like he did Ted DiBiase 2 weeks ago, and DiBiase came to the ring. You didn't say too much about it.
Well, you know, Boyd, you were kind of handling it, and I didn't quite see it that way. I couldn't see it that clearly on the monitor. Hangman Harris is taking over here, but I did see Ted DiBiase run out there, which he's only got one more week to do, by the way, and interfere in somebody else's match, and he's going to get himself hurt real bad one of these days doing that. Of course, it's going to have to be somewhere else because I'm going to pack his bags for him here. But Hangman Harris.
So basically, you know, your typical heel stick. You know, the monitor went out. I have no idea what happened there, Boyd. And yeah. So Barr showed a lot more here than he's been able to recently, even in job duty. He used the head scissors takeover, but then he went for her Hurricanrana. Harris blocked it, dropped Barr throat first on the middle rope because they were standing a little too far away to get to the top rope, and then pinned him after a neck breaker. So let's go to the next scheduled match. It is Big Ernie Ladd, one-on-one with Randy Bass. And let's go to Reeser Bowden for the intro of this match and what happens from here.
This event is for one fall or remaining television time. In the red corner at 240 pounds, from Fort Worth, Texas, Randy Bass.
Randy Bass in the ring. His opponent, the big cat Ernie Ladd.
Where is Ernie Ladd? I mean,
And right now we're waiting for Big Ernie Ladd to come to the arena, but I see referee Alfred Neely is running to the ring. Let's see what's going on here.
Richard, there's been a problem here. Ernie Ladd had refused to wrestle in this match, so Grizzly Smith had got a substitute to be Jesse Barr.
Okay, there you have it. For some reason, Ernie Ladd has refused to wrestle in this match, so across the ring in the blue corner, at 236 pounds from Portland, Oregon, Jesse Barr.
Yes, the same Jesse Barr who just did a job for Hangman Rick Harris is back out to go one-on-one with Randy Bass. So here's where it gets interesting, because why is one-man gang not one-man gang? Why is Ernie Ladd refusing to wrestle Randy Bass? Honestly, at this point, I was kind of thinking if this was it for Ernie Ladd, and you know, this was just a way to start setting him off into the sunset. But we'll get back to that. So Jesse Barr, as mentioned, literally just jobbed, literally just had his throat dropped against the middle rope, and is now kicking Randy Bass's ass while Roop and Boyd talk about what's going on and the mystery of why Ladd refused to wrestle. Roop pointed out that he's never refused to wrestle someone. Bass finally got tired of getting his ass kicked by someone who just got his ass kicked. He ran off the ropes, but got punched in the face. Barr got a near fall off a body slam and another up a small package. And then Jesse Barr, loser of the prior match, picked up a win when he nearly dropped Bass on top of his head with a belly-to-belly overhead suplex for the win. So the biggest loser this week is Randy Bass, who not only lost, he lost to somebody who just lost the match. So we'll see what happens from there, if anything. So then let's go to what is scheduled to be our final standby match of the week. It is One Man Gang and the Assassin with General Skandor Akbar versus Mike Hudspeth and Tony Torres. And much like the last match, we're going to play the intro here with our good friend Reeser Bowden. let's go to that right now.
And now it's tag team action for one fall or remaining television time. In the red corner, at 454 pounds, General Skandor Akbar presents the one-man gang. And his partner at 255 pounds, the Assassin. We're waiting now for the opponents to enter the arena.
Bring him out, referee, bring him out. Bring him out. Bring him out.
Well, it seems that the opponents are having a little difficulty getting into the arena.
There you heard Reese Bowden, Bob Roop. One-man gang and Assassin in the ring. Their opponents, Tony Torres and Mike Hudspeth, yet to make an appearance.
Well, they might have had second thoughts, Boyd. I wouldn't blame them.
Bring them out, bring them out.
The General has got a really kind of a formidable team here. Assassin's one of the best in the world. The one-man gang has put out about 6 or 7 wrestlers since he's been in the Mid-South, so I mean maybe Tony Torres and Mike Hudspeth figure the price is too high to wrestle these men. The General certainly has gotten some results, so spending his money wisely, you might say. And this new Killer Khan, he is very, very impressive.
As we said earlier, Killer Khan from Mongolia, the only man ever to injure the big 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant.
Well, you notice that people all have a theme in common. They injure people. Khan injured Andre the Giant. One-man gang injured a bunch of people.
So you hear the crowd pop. I'll tell you, they're not popping for Mike Hudspeth and Tony Torres. And with a pop like this, I wouldn't have muted it if there wasn't a reason. So intro the match, like 2 minutes long, and it's like you start wondering what on earth is going on in the babyface locker room in Mid-South Wrestling. Are we going to get another match with our good friend Jesse Barr? And so Tony Torres and Mike Hudspeth are no showing, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. And hey, don't let anyone tell you that nothing happens during these standby matches, because all of a sudden we have some stuff happening here. And you heard Boyd and Roop are just killing some time before the crowd pops huge, because it is the Junkyard Dog and Ernie Ladd are coming out to hit the ring to face One-Man Gang and the Assassin. And so the heels just desert the ring, and this ends up just being an end of the show promo. And speaking of which, let's go to that. So there's no match. For all intents and purposes, Dog and Ernie Ladd win by forfeiture. And so let's go to that now. And we're going to play it off to the end of the show because Bob Roop has some more stuff to say. And then I'll remind you of stuff that's happened that you may have forgotten. And then we'll be able to finish things up from here.
Now it seems that they have no opponents. The one-man gang and Skandor Akbar have deserted the ring.
Well, I don't blame them. They didn't sign a contract against these guys.
Obviously, they have deserted the ring, so that would apparently mean a forfeiture of the match.
Racer, all I can say is this. It's just about time that somebody take this thing under control.
Well, it seems that you and Big Ernie Ladd have certainly taken it under control.
When I owe a man a favor, Risa. When I owe a man a favor, I'll pay my debts. And it's time now for some unity to come together. And Ladd, I owe you a favor, and I'm about to pay it. One time, baby. One time.
There, you've seen something that you never expected to see. Big Ernie Ladd and Junkyard Dog on the same team.
I heard Richard Bowden say that, but Boyd, that's very hard to believe that someone would stoop so low as to do that kind of thing, get rid of the regular opponent some way, and come out here and try to take over a match that they weren't even scheduled in. And I don't approve of that kind of thing.
Bob Roop, I always said it like it is here on Mid-South Wrestling, and it looks to me like the time has come when the Junkyard Dog and Ernie Ladd will have to let their personal differences, their animosities go by as being something behind them, join forces, somebody has to stop the ruffians from General Skandar Akbar's army.
Well, the reason why is probably because if the junk dog is after me, it needs some help. But you people out there, I want to say, you got 1 week to wish Ted DiBiase goodbye. In fact, Boyd, I'd like to buy some time on this program next week. So after I beat Ted DiBiase, I would like to have his bags out here where everybody across the country could watch him pack his bags and head back to oblivion where he belongs.
We've had a lot of exciting action, a lot of confusion, a lot of great wrestling this week. Next week, one fall, no disqualification. Ted DiBiase gets a chance at the North American Heavyweight Championship match and the belt that goes with it. So until then, thank you so much for joining us week after week. For our guest commentator, Bob Roop, I'm Boyd Pierce saying goodbye, everybody, for Mid-South Wrestling Television Network.
So when Roop says that he does not condone whatever happened to take out somebody scheduled for a match and, take them away from their scheduled match, Boyd Pierce just gives this look at the camera like, are you fucking kidding me, you asshole? That's literally how your title reign was basically built around. And it's hilarious. If you go back on Peacock and watch this, it's there towards the end of the show. The heels desert the ring. Ernie Ladd says that it's just about time that we get this under control because the heels have been running roughshod across Mid-South Wrestling the past 6 months or so. Skandar Akbar's brought in one giant monster after another. And yeah, it's time to turn things around, so to speak. So Dog said that he owed Ernie Ladd a favor because Ernie Ladd helped him out once. And Dog said that he will repay it one time. If you remember back in February when Ernie Ladd turned babyface, and it really wasn't much of a babyface turn. He turned babyface because the Samoans turned on him, which is always a tremendous way to turn babyface. And Dog refused to be his partner. He offered Junkyard Dog, I think it was $10,000 to be his partner one time, and Dog turned it down because it's Ernie Ladd, and that's actually what led to the Assassin coming in. We finished the show, and it was a nice reminder that, hey, if you were watching and you're paying attention, Ernie Ladd was turned down by Junkyard Dog. Then Ernie Ladd did a favor for Dog, and now Dog's like, okay, I owe you one, so let's get this taken care of here. And, of course, the show finishes with Bob Roop's final promo to build up next week's match, where he wrestles Ted DiBiase in a no DQ match for the North American title, and DiBiase will have to leave Mid-South if he loses and does not come out with the North American title. So that is going to make for a very interesting show right here next week. So I should note that conspicuous by his absence the last few weeks, Precious Paul Ellering. I promise he does come back with more of our fun workout tapes, and so that will make for some fun stuff to talk about here. Hashtag sad face. I should note that Ernie Ladd is finishing up. He only has a couple more TV matches before he leaves for Florida in October. He will be back. I don't know if he remains the booker because I don't think Bill Dundee becomes booker until the end of '83 when Bill Watts does the talent trade with Jerry Jarrett and brings in the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and Cornette and all that stuff. So I honestly don't know what the booking situation is for the next year plus. But hey, I know that we're going to have some fun talking about it until then. So that's going to do it for this week's Mid-South Wrestling. And with that, we go to my favorite segment of the week. It is Weird News of the Week, presented by Nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And once again, we go to UPI.com. We go to our good friend Ben Hooper for this week's Weird News. Student service dog gets honorary diploma in New Jersey. The graduation ceremony at New Jersey's Seton Hall University featured a diploma being presented to one very special graduate, a student service dog. A video tweeted by the university shows Grace Mariani and her service dog, Justin, being presented with diplomas by Seton Hall's Joseph E. Nair. Mariani received a Bachelor's of Science in Education degree, while Justin was presented with an honorary diploma for attending all of his owner's classes. Mariani said she plans to teach elementary and special education, and Justin will remain by her side in her career. So see, it's not just Greendale Community College that gave a degree to a dog. It's the prestigious Seton Hall that did as well. Of course, it's also in New Jersey, so that might explain everything right there. So anyway, that's going to wrap things up for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. Next week, it's a big show next week with Ted DiBiase challenging for the North American title. Please continue to listen to not only this show, but to the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project every Friday. And until we meet again, I want to thank you all for listening and hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care. And welcome to episode number 043 of Something Else with Aria and Not KJ. My name is Aria. Today we are going to be talking about Mid-South Wrestling from June 24th, 1982, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Thank you for listening. And today is the big day, the one that we have been teasing for weeks. Ted DiBiase gets his no disqualification match for the North American title, and so much more. And if you're listening to the dulcet tones of my voice and want to hear it somewhere else, there are a boatload of ways you can listen to this show. First and foremost at tinyurl.com/somethingelsepod, angrymarks.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Overcast, Pod Paradise, Castro, Podbay.fm, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. And as we say every week, all these places that you've never heard of are all real places. So we're going to jump right in here to Mid-South. By the way, before I do jump right in and I cut us off, before we truly jump right in here, check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project every Friday where you get your Something Else podcast. If you subscribe to this show, you not only get this, the weekly Something Else broadcast, you also get the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project. It involves no extra subscribing, no penny out of your pocket unless you really desperately want to give me money. I'm not asking for it, but please check it out. So we've got a big show. We're going to jump right in here. We're going to go to the opening segment. Now, the opening segment goes almost 8 minutes, but we're going to break it up into 3 parts. So we're going to start with Boyd Pierce and Bill Watts doing the intro, and they have some really big news that I've been teasing for weeks now. So let's play that here, and then I'll be right back to talk about that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce. We have a lot of exciting action coming up for you, along with interesting interviews. You'll see Steve Dr. Death Williams in action. Also, the International Tag Team Champions, Big John Studd and the Super Destroyer will be here. Also, the North American Heavyweight Championship will be on the line. We have a new North American Heavyweight title holder. To bring you the details and make the announcement, our guest commentator, the Oklahoma Stampeder Cowboy Bill Watts.
Well, Boyd, thank you. You're really generous because I know this announcement is going to stun everybody. Through a very unusual set of circumstances, June the 21st in downtown New Orleans, the Junkyard Dog defeated Bob Roop and became the North American champion. Ted DiBiase was scheduled to wrestle Bob Roop that night, and in an altercation in the Dog's match that DiBiase went in and probably kept the Dog from being seriously injured. He was hurt. Grizzly Smith had promised him a match. He put the dog back in there. The Junkyard Dog won the match. Bob Roop is protesting, but Mid-South has said that the Junkyard Dog is the North American champion. That brings us to an unusual situation because, first of all, the dog as the Louisiana champion must vacate that title, and a tournament will be held for it because the dog, due to the rigorous scheduling, cannot defend the North American, the Louisiana, and the Mid-South tag. So the dog has already vacated the Louisiana title. They will hold the tournament, the one-night tournament in Baton Rouge on July the 6th. But the second thing is that Ted DiBiase was promised a no disqualification, one fall, no disqualification match against the North American champion today here on television. And Ted DiBiase said if he got the match and didn't win it, he would leave Mid-South. Here's a young man who was the best man. The Junkyard Dog was his best man in his wedding. They've been inseparable companions, and due to the fortunes of war, so to speak, they have to wrestle today for the most prestigious title in the United States. But first, let's talk to the dog about his feeling about having to vacate the Louisiana title.
All right, so giant news to kick off the show. We were scheduled to have Bob Roop defending the North American title against Ted DiBiase. However, Bob Roop lost the title to the Junkyard Dog. And the way Bill Watts describes it was something similar to something we've seen several times in the past few months. Dog was on the verge of being injured during his match previously on the show. DiBiase ran out to help. DiBiase himself got injured, so he couldn't have his match that night with Roop. And so instead, Dog got the match. Dog got the title, and he is the new North American champion. And so what that means, as Bill has pointed out, first of all, Junkyard Dog will defend today in a no disqualification match against Ted DiBiase, where Ted DiBiase has vowed to leave Mid-South Wrestling forever if he does not win the championship. Also, thanks to the ruling that shockingly, mysteriously just got created 2 or 3 weeks ago, Junkyard Dog cannot hold a state title and be the North American champion at the same time. So he has to forfeit the Louisiana title. It's going to be put up in a tournament coming up on July 6th to determine a new champion. And yeah, so now we pitched it to some interviews. First, it's going to be with Junkyard Dog. Then we're going to go to Ted DiBiase. And then they're going to pitch it back to Dog for his comments afterwards. And Bill Watts is going to be in between. So let's go to that right now, and we'll be right back.
There's very few people throughout the world have to stand up under the pressure as I, the Junkyard Dog, is standing under today. Some because I was very fortunate in New Orleans to win the North American heavyweight belt from Bob Roop. Now, following the rules through the Mid-South area, any man on any given day that maintains the Louisiana heavyweight belt and also the North American heavyweight belt have to forfeit the Louisiana belt. And on July the 6th in Baton Rouge, they will have a tournament for this Louisiana belt. Now back to the North America. Now I will defend this North America belt the best of my abilities throughout the world, just like I did with this Louisiana belt, Louisiana heavyweight belt. And I will praise the North American belt just as much, and I will fight just as hard for this North America belt that I did with my Louisiana belt.
Well, Boyd, I don't think DiBiase ever in his wildest dream imagined he would be facing the situation that faces him today, that he would be wrestling his best friend, the Junkyard Dog, for the North American title, one fall, no disqualification. And also the added stipulation that he executed himself, that if he doesn't win that title, he'll leave Mid-South. I asked Ted DiBiase about it. Let's listen to his answer.
Well, Bill, when Mid-South Wrestling promised me a North American title shot, no disqualification, one fall to win, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would have to face the Junkyard Dog. And in my professional career, I've always maintained that I could beat any man walking in professional wrestling, but I have to admit, very honestly, that right now I'm left with some doubt in my mind as to whether I can beat the Junkyard Dog. But the Junkyard Dog doesn't pay my bills, and he doesn't put a roof over my family's head. And if I don't win this match, I have to leave Mid-South. That's part of the agreement that I've made. And ever since I've been in professional wrestling, I've always been taught that when you step in that ring, friendship ends and business starts up. So, Junkyard Dog, I either have to go or I have to beat you. So tonight I'm going to do my dead level best to do just that, to beat you and regain the North American heavyweight title.
In asking the Junkyard Dog his opinion about defending the title against Ted DiBiase, you could tell the dog was reticent and didn't really want to talk about it, and certainly doesn't relish having his first title defense against a man that's been so close to him. Let's listen as the dog answers the question about what he thinks about defending this title against DiBiase.
Right now, the Junkyard Dog, very few people ever heard me at a low profile, but now I'm standing at a very delicate situation. Here's a man that has signed a paper through the Mid-South area. If he doesn't regain the North American heavyweight title, he will have to leave the Mid-South area. And I never thought on any given day that I have to face Ted DiBiase. Now I'm standing on a time bomb. But Ted DiBiase, just like he said, I listen at his promos. I don't feed his family. I have a family of my own to feed. And there's so many things that it got me all confused because I was Ted DiBiase's best man in his wedding. It means a whole lot to me. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to give Ted DiBiase a chance at this North America belt. And one thing I feel for sure, I don't have to worry about my back because Ted DiBiase is a fair man.
Okay, then. So you heard it all right there. And I mean, it's pretty straightforward. The first promo is basically just about Dog, now that he's North American champion, he has to forfeit the Louisiana title. And, you know, he worked hard to get that Louisiana title. And it stinks now that, you know, he has to give it up without actually losing it. But nope, he cannot hold two singles championships at the same time, even though he's also half of the tag team champions, because Mid-South only has, like, you know, 16 people and, like, 4 title belts. So, you know, people double up. And you see that a lot, actually, on the show. DiBiase cuts a promo. He said, you know, that he had no idea that when he made this deal that he might have to wrestle the Junkyard Dog. And unlike with Roop, he has doubts about whether or not he can beat the Junkyard Dog. But however, when they get in that ring, friendship ends and business picks up. Watts, of course, you heard him recap it. He sent it to the Dog. Dog gave his thoughts about wrestling Ted DiBiase. Dog points out, and actually DiBiase pointed out, Dog does not pay his bills. Dog does not feed his family. And if DiBiase loses him, he has to leave Mid-South, he may not be able to make as much money to feed his family. What will Ted Jr., what will Brett do? Maybe they'll have to steal from the state of Mississippi. I don't know. But, you know, they pointed out a few times that Dog was Ted's best man at Ted's wedding, and that Dog doesn't have to worry about watching his back because Ted DiBiase is a good man. So now you might be wondering, hey, we've heard from the current champion, Junkyard Dog. We've heard from the challenger, Ted DiBiase. What happened to our former champion, Bob Roop? Let's go to Bill Watts, who's going to talk about Bob Roop, and then we'll hear from the former North American champion.
Well, Boyd, one man who's never reticent and never at a loss for words, Bob Roop, the former North American champion, who possibly justifiably was, quote, ripped off, close quotes, but still the man winning the title was certainly deserving. Bob Roop made some comments about the DiBiase Junkyard Dog match and also issued a challenge. Let's listen to that now.
You hear a lot of complaints, but I have a legitimate claim for a ripoff. I signed for a title match with Ted DiBiase. He couldn't make it. He couldn't face up to the match. Instead, Junkyard Dog came into the ring. I didn't even have a contract signed with him. Attacked me. Yes, he beat me and he won the belt. I am no longer the champion. Well, I'm issuing a challenge right now to the Junkyard Dog. I want a match with him next week. And what I'm saying is, I can sit here and rest fairly assured that the Junkyard Dog will be the North American champion next week, because Ted DiBiase couldn't beat me for the title, and there is no way that he can beat the Junkyard Dog. So next week, I'm going after the Junkyard Dog for the North American title, and it'll be back where it belongs.
Well, Bill Watts, later on in today's program, we will have the North American Heavyweight Championship on the line. Junkyard Dog defending against Ted DiBiase with no disqualification. And my guest commentator during that title match will be the former North American Heavyweight Champion, Bob Roop. Right now, we'll be back with live action after this important message from Mid-South Wrestling Television Network.
So, love the guy or hate the guy, and, a lot of people hate him. But Bob Roop has a point. He had a scheduled match with Ted DiBiase. It wasn't his fault that DiBiase got hurt. It was Ted DiBiase's fault for getting his nose in a situation that had nothing to do with him. However, he then got beat by a man he wasn't contracted to wrestle. And he's throwing a protest. And the irony in all of this is Roop's title reign ends the same way it began. He wasn't supposed to get that match against Ted DiBiase back in March. It was supposed to be Paul Orndorff. However, through shenanigans, he ended up with the title match, and then he loses the title the same way. It's in many ways, it's irony, and it's like how Billy Graham won and lost the title. When he beat Bruno, he had his feet on the ropes, and then when he lost the title to Backlund, he had his foot on the ropes, but the referee didn't see it to break up the count. And it's one of those things that you can do in wrestling. The heel did something awful, and now we're going to do the same thing to the heel, but it's okay because the heel did it first. So we've got a North American title match coming up later. First, we have a couple matches to get before we get there. First up is Dr. Death Steve Williams going one-on-one with Jeff Sword. Dr. Death is still rocking his University of Oklahoma bathrobe that he debuted last week. No one has yet told him that looks stupid and he needs to invest in a better robe, or, at least like the jacket you'd see him wear later on. And of course, when Dr. Death is wrestling, it gives Bill his weekly opportunity to just talk forever and a day about recent amateur wrestling tournaments. Bill mentions his children look up to Dr. Death, and he talks about how Dave and Mark Schultz, yes, that Dave and Mark Schultz, were working with his son Micah, and now Micah just won a big tournament. Jeff Sword is one of those career jobbers who you've seen job pretty much everywhere. He did get a push during the end of the USWA in the 90s, but if you watch 80s territory wrestling, you've probably seen him looking up at the lights. At the moment, he's mostly in Mid-Atlantic, and believe it or not, when we were doing Worldwide last year, we talked about Jeff Sword wrestling then, too. During this match, the entire front row on the side camera side was rearranging their seats. My theory, and I could be wrong, could be right, that they didn't set up those seats not expecting extra fans, but when they showed up, they let them in, and they had to put down chairs, and it just happened to be during the opening match. So Dr. Death won with an Oklahoma Stampede. There really isn't much to talk about here. Basically the same thing we've talked about every week about Dr. Death. The finish was a little screwy. He threw Jeff Sword into the corner. Sword didn't bounce out, but Dr. Death still went into position for the Oklahoma Stampede. So that was a little rough to look at. But hey, he picked up the win. The fans didn't seem to care about the mess up there, or at least they were forgiving about it. And Dr. Death is still undefeated on TV. We then get a match between four guys we've never seen on this show before, or at least, since December when we began watching. It is the International Tag Team Champions from Georgia, Big John Studd and Super Destroyer, against Ernie Kirkland and David Price. Ernie Kirkland doesn't have a cage match profile, but David Price not only does, but he has some inadvertent internet infamy. The name David Price may not ring a bell, However, David Price also wrestled as Motley Cruz. Yes, the Motley Cruz who turned the tables on Jumpin' Jeff Farmer in the wrong way. That Motley Cruz is here on Mid-South, the team with Ernie Kirkland against the International Tag Team Champions. And actually, you know, David Price, Motley Cruz, was mostly wrestling in St. Louis around this time, and he's been the jobber to the stars the past year. Just in the past year, he has done jobs to David Von Erich, Kerry Von Erich, Bobo Brazil, Harley Race, Rocky Johnson, The Missing Link, Dick the Bruiser, The Iron Sheik, and yes, Rick fucking Flair. He may be an enhancement talent, but that is some quality experience right there. In case you didn't know, Super Destroyer is Bill Eadie, best known as Mass Superstar and Demolition Axe. We are still 2 years away from Black Saturday when Vince bought Georgia to get the TBS station, or to get the TBS hours or slots. Watts basically has to defend that just because you see these two guys on TBS, on nationwide television out of Georgia, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are better than the Mid-South Tag Team Champions, who, if you forget, are Junkyard Dog, who's apparently allowed to have tag team titles and the North American title, and Mr. Olympia, who's also the Mississippi champion. And they're actually building up to a match between these two teams at the Superdome in the Battle of the Champions here. Destroyer takes out Price with a superplex, and Studd submitted him with an over-the-shoulder backbreaker. Then it's time for the no disqualification North American title match. The match that had been built up for 7 months. I mean, it's been built up for about 20 minutes. Actually, this match, in some ways, it's been built up for a couple months itself, because DiBiase, ever since he came back from his injury, he has been out there running in to help Dog, running in to help other baby faces who are on the verge of being injured himself. And yeah, here we go. If you watch on Peacock, now, for those who don't know, Junkyard Dog's theme song is Another One Bites the Dust. WWE is not going to pay the music royalty rights to have Another One Bites the Dust, so they typically dub in a very poor version of it as Junkyard Dog's quote-unquote Peacock theme song, WWE Network theme song. However, that's not what they did this week. Instead, suddenly the doors open and 20,000 people have suddenly appeared at the Irish McNeil Boys Club as a giant ovation, bigger than any you will ever see on modern day WWE, including at several WrestleManias with, tens of thousands of people in them. Suddenly, the roar of the crowd for Junkyard Dog. I don't know where all these people came from, but they apparently were all there, because WWE would never do something like pipe in fake crowd noise, But Jesus Christ, I don't think they did this for their own show. Like, they piped in fake crowd noise in the 80s for their own TV tapings, but I doubt if you went back and watched any of them, you would not see WWE pumping in as much fake crowd noise for their own guys as they did on this episode of Mid-South for the Junkyard Dog. So our former North American champion, Bob Roop, is here as promised to do guest commentary. This match is one fall with TV time remaining. So what would happen if the match goes to the TV time limit? That isn't mentioned, but it's pretty much implied that since by the rule of, the stipulation that if DiBiase doesn't win the title, he's going to leave Mid-South. So if this match goes to a time limit draw, hey, he's gone. So we have some good, clean wrestling early on, and we're going to play some audio from Bob Roop, who's going to tell us the history of these two men. and I'll be right back to cover from there.
Junkyard Dog stood up for Ted DiBiase when he got hurt in Atlanta. He went in, took over his matches. He helped him financially when Ted DiBiase was unable to make a living. When Junkyard Dog got blinded, Ted DiBiase acted in effect as a seeing-eye dog for him, led him around, made sure nobody bothered with him. Oh, they're good friends. Ride down the road together. Now they got to wrestle each other. And big, big stakes. Not just titles at stake here, but careers. Now you're seeing some good moves, but both these men have got in the back of their minds, hey, this is my friend I'm wrestling. This is a man that's watched my back. This is a man I've ridden maybe 100,000 miles down the road with, talked to about my hopes and dreams, and now I got to beat him. Now look right there.
And you see a couple times, Roop is, like I've always said, Roop is a lot better than he ever gets credit for. And, this is one of those times because he is helping set that stage again, that these two have been together forever. So even if you haven't watched these shows, like technically we haven't, we've only been watching since December. So if you haven't been watching these shows and you don't know the history, Roop is telling you, hey, when they did that famous angle with Dog being blinded, DiBiase was there to help Dog. When DiBiase had problems, Dog was there to help him. They have a relationship that goes back forever. Dog was the best man at Ted DiBiase's wedding. These two are good friends. Junkyard Dog uses a snapmare and went for a fist drop, but stopped himself from doing it. Because, again, this is his friend. He doesn't want to use tactics like punches and kicks. He wants to wrestle and prove who the better wrestler is. They did it a second time where Dog had the chance to go. And again, he stopped himself from doing it. Roop pointed out that DiBiase couldn't beat Roop, and Roop couldn't beat the Junkyard Dog. So by the transitive property, DiBiase can't beat Dog. Dog goes for the thump, but DiBiase flails around, was able to get to the ropes. DiBiase hit his power slam for the 1, the 2, and Dog kicked out so hard that DiBiase went flying over the top of referee Alfred Neely. And then came the finish. Ted goes for the figure 4, but Dog kicks him off, and Ted goes flying out of the ring. Dog, being a good sportsman and a good friend, he goes out, he picks up Ted, and, helps him back in the ring. And then, right here on Mid-South Wrestling, we saw the biggest betrayal since Benedict Arnold sold the plans to West Point to the British. DiBiase put a foreign object that he pulled out of his tights in his glove and knocked Junkyard Dog the fuck out. And Dog sells it big. DiBiase hides the foreign object that he put in his glove. Yes, the glove that was on top of his supposedly injured hand. And DiBiase falls on top. And yes, the referee counted 3, and Ted DiBiase is the new North American champion. Bob Roop screams to the high heavens that he was right. DiBiase's hand wasn't hurt. He was using this glove. He was planning on doing this to Roop, but because Roop lost, he did it to his friend Junkyard Dog instead. DiBiase knew that he could not beat Junkyard Dog fair and square, so he betrayed his longtime best friend. He betrayed the best man at his wedding. All of that for the North American title. And Bob Roop was right all along. Ted DiBiase is a coward. Ted DiBiase, cannot be trusted. And now he is the North American champion. What is going to happen from here? I don't know. But we're going to have to tune in next week and find out what's next. We'll, like this is a bit of a story that's going to go on here for a little bit. All right. So we go to commercial, we come back, and Bob Roop is gone. Junkyard Dog has finally gotten out of the ring, and Bill Watts has some stuff to say, and then he's going to send us to a video from last year in the WWF. Yes, this really happens. About Andre the Giant and Killer Khan. And, this is a little bit long, and if I can break it up a little bit, I will. But we're going to go to that right now, and then I'll be right back to talk about it here.
Boyd, I think I, like you, like everybody at home, is a little bit in shock right now. It's taken all this time for him to finally get the Junkyard Dog out of the ring. They had to get some ice out of the concession area. And, I don't really, Bob Roop was talking about DiBiase and something with that glove. I was watching him in the dressing room, and I couldn't tell that much, but I can say this, that I've seen the dog hit with a lot of things. I have never seen his running lights put out like that, because he definitely is not one of those people with a glass jaw. He can take a beating, and they just now got him out of the ring. We'll try to investigate this further, but Ted DiBiase is the North American champion. Another institution, a man that is the 8th wonder of the world, 7'4", 485-pound Andre the Giant, was hurt, and only one man has ever hurt him and hospitalized him. That was Killer Khan under the guidance of Fred Blassie. That happened last year, and we'll talk with Vince McMahon Jr. from Madison Square Garden as he was talking about to Andre after he got his cast off. Let's join that.
Ladies and gentlemen, there used to be a 10-pound cast on this size 22 foot, but there is no cast now. There is no cast at all on either foot. This extraordinary athlete, the most extraordinary of all time, just finished a very rigorous workout. After showering, toweling off Andre the Giant, are you not ready for Killer Khan?
I'm more than ready. I feel so good to sit here with you with no cast on. Believe me, after over 2 months in that cast, just like I said to you before, I'm ready to fly everywhere you want.
Killer Khan feels that you will not be at 100% capacity.
That's what he thinks. But can you see the way it's from my foot, and you see me work out before?
I think you look better than ever.
I told you what I was there before. A few months ago, I got a surprise for you. Even when you called me in my place, I told you I got a big surprise.
Andre,
and you see it yourself now.
Yes, indeed, but we have a surprise for you. We're going to take you back to what happened on television, just not long ago, as a matter of fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special segment of our program this week. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you, without a doubt, the most phenomenal athlete of all time. Here with us, the one and the only Andre the Giant.
Good.
Terrific. The question is, how are you doing?
I'm currently very good. In fact, I got good news for you.
We could stand some good news. What is it?
Tomorrow I'm going back in the hospital to take off my cast.
That is really good news. So tomorrow the cast comes off. You obviously, Andre, have been exercising and things of that nature, have you not, to keep the ligaments loose or whatever?
Yeah, and in probably 4 or 5 more weeks I'll be back in the ring, maybe before that. The doctor says that everything is okay, it'll be perfect maybe in 2 weeks.
So as soon as the cast comes off, then you're going to be thinking about stepping back in the squared circle. Let me ask you, Andre, do you feel, your doctors and what have you, feel that it's wise to go back into the ring so soon?
We're going to find it tomorrow after they take off the cast. They're going to take some more X-ray, and then I'm going to be ready, I think, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And Freddie Blassie, he better get Killer Khan in shape, because I'll be ready to chase him everywhere.
Andre, I'm sure it was frustrating for you to be in the hospital and to listen to Fred Blassie. You're not invited.
I don't care if I'm invited. What do you got this palook on out for? What are you asking him for? You see the legs broke. He's all through. He's washed up.
He's not with Mr. Blassie.
What are you talking about? I'm washed up. You say I don't go to wrestling anymore. But I got the news. I'm going back in that ring.
You're going back on what? You're all through. This is nothing but a fluker. He's all through. The man is through. You.
Andre, in viewing that and viewing what happened to you with Killer Khan, how do you feel?
I'll tell you, when that happened, I have the cast on that time. But now the cast is out. Again, you see my leg and you see the way I walk on that ring before. Just so you know, I'm ready and calm. This time you don't have any use in these quarters to get you in my back, because I don't let you go come in my back. And I want to say one thing, Freddie Blassie. If you show up around that ring, I will knock you out, put it under that ring, and then I will take care of you, Killer Khan. But now, you say, even if I stay those quarters, I go to use it and broke it all over his back. And Khan, you better be ready, because you never see a giant man before. And I'm going to tell you, you call yourself a giant Mongol. You're not a giant at all. You're only 6'6". I'm 7'4", and I'm more than ready, because I'm still undefeated.
Well, Boyd Skandar Akbar knew what he was doing when he bought the Mongolian Killer Khan's contract from Freddie Blassie. But just like Andre the Giant said, he's mad. And when you're 7'4", 485 pounds, you're formidable when you're happy. When he's mad, there's no telling what kind of damage he'll do. I'll tell you another man that's going to be mad when he comes to and figures out just what's happened to him and gets his marbles all back straight. That's going to be the Junkyard Dog. A lot of things are happening. Don't go away. Let's go to the ring now to Killer Khan and Skandar Akbar.
All right. So, hey, I'm still here. I'm still alive. So they show us an angle from last year where Andre the Giant had, his ankle broken. And by the way, this is from May of 1981. We are currently at the end of June 1982. And in case it isn't painfully obvious why they're doing this, it's because Killer Khan and Andre are going to be wrestling at the next Superdome show on July 17th. So, hey, let's give the fans a reminder as to why. And so, anyway, it starts with a video of Vince sitting down with Andre the Giant, and they're sitting on wooden chairs. They're just talking about it. They show Andre's stitched up ankle. Then they send us to an angle of a prior segment where Andre was telling Vince that he's getting his cast off soon. Freddie Blassie comes out and runs him down. And so Andre throws down Blassie. But in doing so, he drops his crutch. Killer Khan comes running out and hits Andre with the crutch. Finally, Pat Patterson came out and ran them both off. Andre then screamed at Pat Patterson, and it brought us back to our original interview, where suddenly Andre has grown about 6 inches, because a minute ago he was, a good, he wasn't a whole lot taller than Vince during the promo that we saw with the ankle and the crutches. But now Vince is a midget in comparison. So Andre grew, Vince shrunk, something happened there. But anyway, Andre said that Khan isn't a real giant. He's only 6'6". Andre is 7'4". Watts comes back and recaps it and sends us to the ring, where Killer Khan with General Skandar Akbar takes on Joe Stark. Khan immediately locked on a front chancery, and I actually thought we were going to get an immediate submission because of the way Stark was selling it. But nope, match continues. Next week, we have 3 big matches. It is Killer Khan versus Ernie Ladd, Mr. Olympia versus the Grappler for the Mississippi title, and Junkyard Dog versus Bob Roop. And so it's not going to be Roop getting a title shot, like I assumed what was going to happen when Roop did his interview challenging Dog to a title match. But instead, it is Junkyard Dog versus Bob Roop in just a standard singles match now next week, right here on television. So argument aside about whether or not Killer Khan is any good, he is really good for his gimmick. He's really good for his character. It's like you can watch him wrestle and believe that he is a crazy person who would do something like injure Andre the Giant. And Khan won with a middle rope knee drop. By the way, not sure if I mentioned this, but in case you weren't sure, Andre didn't get injured by Killer Khan. That was what they did. They did a knee drop off the top rope onto Andre's ankle. But what really happened was Andre broke his ankle getting out of bed one day. Then we're going to go to the next match, and I'm going to play Reese's introduction and be right back.
This event is for one fall or remaining television time. In the red corner at 235 pounds from Charlotte, North Carolina, Billy the Star Child Star. And in the blue corner at 242 pounds from Amarillo, Texas, Buckley Christopher George Robley III.
For some reason, and this will continue on the entire time he is here in Mid-South, Reeser Bowden will always introduce Buck Robley under the name of Buckley Christopher George Robley III. I mean, yes, that is his name, but at the same time, it's like, why? He doesn't introduce Andre the Giant as Andre Rene Roussimoff or anything of that note. But for whatever reason, Buck Robley, for as long as he's here, will always be Buckley Christopher George Robley III. And anyway, Buckley is going one-on-one here with Billy the Star Child Star. And they announced that we're going to have our next standby match will feature Tom Jones. Tom Jones is going to team with Ernie Ladd to take on One Man Gang and the Grappler, but that's only if Buckley can win in the next 8 minutes. And I'll tell you what, I wasn't really a fan of Tom Jones, but I'm excited to see Tom Jones, the singer, wrestle here. Sir Tom Jones. I mean, the guy's apparently 80 years old, so he's in his late 40s. I didn't even know he wrestled. And, this should be really interesting. But before we get to a famous singer wrestling with Ernie Ladd, Buck Robley is wearing a yellow shirt that says, "Nobody calls me yellow." And it's funny because the way Watts describes him, and, he sounds like this big heel that's coming in to take out the top baby faces. But no, I believe he's actually a baby face. And I guess we'll see in the next few weeks, but Watts is selling it otherwise. They mentioned that DiBiase will have to live with his decision to betray his friend, the Junkyard Dog, for the rest of his life. All I'll say is I think he has a few other things to worry about right now, but, whatever. Robley wins with a sleeper hold. We go to commercial, we come back, and unfortunately, it is not that Tom Jones. This is an African-American wrestler who is currently wrestling in Houston, and judging from his cage match profile, he is a true journeyman as he's all over the place. He does spend a decent amount of time in Portland, but after next week, we won't see this Tom Jones for a year, and we actually never see the other Tom Jones. So here's our match. It is Big Ernie Ladd and Not That Tom Jones versus One Man Gang and the Grappler, with the Assassin and General Skandor Akbar in their corner. And I'm going to play the intro here in a second, but first, I want to tell you that when they start introducing the match, all you see on the screen is the Grappler and the Assassin. And so it's like, okay, this is a fuck up. One Man Gang is hiding off camera, and they even have the graphic up saying, Grappler and One Man Gang. But there's a reason for all this shenanigans. Let's play some audio and go to that right now.
It's tag team action now for one fall or remaining television time. In the red corner, at 246 pounds from parts unknown, the Grappler. And his partner at 454 pounds, the One Man Gang. And coming to the ring now are their opponents, but it seems that the Assassin has something to say.
I got a couple of things I want to say. Last week, the One Man Gang and I were scheduled to wrestle Hudspeth and Torres.
Yet Big Mouth Ernie Ladd and the Junkyard Dog try to jump us from behind. Well, we didn't stay around to have any part of that, but I'm going to tell you something. Lad, let's finish it once and for all. Let's finish it right here, right now, once and for all. Why don't you two guys go get yourselves a partner? Go get yourselves a partner. Yeah, go get the Junkyard Dog. Oh, yeah, I'm sure he's got a nice headache from that. He's really got a headache right now. Or go get Ted DiBiase. Yeah, he's somebody that can really be trusted now, isn't he? Go get yourselves a partner, and let's finish this thing once and for all. Come on, go get yourselves a partner. I like to see the bum that you get.
All right, so the Assassin wants a six-man tag team match instead of the tag match, basically because, remember last week, as Assassin brought up, they're supposed to wrestle Mike Hudspeth and Tony Torres, but instead we got Ernie Ladd and Junkyard Dog coming out. By the way, I do have an update. Last week we talked about how Ernie Ladd is pretty much on his way out the door at this point. However, I wasn't sure if he remained the booker because I know that Bill, what's his name? Bill Dundee doesn't become the booker until November of next year. So I was curious. So I went onto Twitter and asked Mike Mills of Booking the Territory and who's also a Mid-South historian regarding that. And he actually sent it to a gentleman named Sparks, Sparks Third Coast on Twitter, if you want to check him out, who said that Ladd was still booking Mid-South while he was working for Crockett. There wasn't another booker between him and Dundee unless it was just a brief interim deal. So even though even though Ernie Ladd won't be on the show here for a little bit, he's still booking the show. And so anyway, while I'm talking, out from the aisle came Ernie Ladd and Not That Tom Jones partner, and we have a six-man tag. It is one-man gang, the Grappler and the Assassin, with General Skandor Akbar versus Big Ernie Ladd, Not That Tom Jones, and Buckley Christopher George Robley III. But it really wasn't even a match. It was just a crazy six-way brawl that took up the last minute of the show. Ladd gives one-man gang a body slam, but since they were in the middle of everything going on, like nobody really noticed. Watts didn't even talk about it, and the heels eventually bailed and to end the show. So it was a hot finish to the show this week, and a really, really good episode. And again, in addition to being a really good episode that ended some storylines, it is setting up the next story. Now you're interested. Now Ted DiBiase has turned heel on Junkyard Dog. He's cost his friend the North American title, and now he has to come back next week and explain his actions. Now he has to see, now we're going to see what's going to happen with DiBiase and Dog. What's Bob Roop got to do with all of it? Is Roop going to be still in the title picture? And yeah, hooray for, mid-80s territory wrestling. If this was Raw, like the last 6 weeks would have all happened on one show. But instead, we had it nice, built out. It's a little slow for some people, but it makes the payoffs that much better. So that'll do it for our Mid-South portion. And so for that, now we move on to my favorite segment of the week. It is Weird News of the Week. That is Weird News of the Week presented by Nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And of course, as always, we go to upi.com. We go to Ben Hooper, our good friend who was here with us a couple months ago. And we talk about this week's story, Loose Horse Interrupts School Zone Assessment in Saskatchewan. The Canadian Automobile Association said a school zone assessment in Saskatchewan was interrupted by a loose horse that wandered into the street and halted traffic. CAA Saskatchewan said in a news release that personnel were doing a school zone assessment which analyzes driver and pedestrian behaviors in a school zone outside an East End school when traffic was brought to a standstill by an unbridled horse in the middle of the road. Police arrived on the scene and escorted the horse out of the road with the help from volunteers, CAA Saskatchewan said. Traffic had to be halted from all directions as RCMP and volunteers captured and led the horse to safety with no impact to students, the organization said. An unusual situation, but also a good reminder that motorists need to be aware and alert at all times. And actually, I've got a little bit of a story on that too. Last year, I was driving to my boss's house in Tiverton, Rhode Island, because I had to drop some stuff off at his place. And I was halted in the middle of the road for a good minute or two by a tiny horse that belonged to one of my boss's neighbors that had gotten loose and had trotted out into the middle of the road. And it was just one of those crazy things that happens. And the horse ended up being safe. It actually led itself off to the other side of the road, thankfully. And, you got to love wildlife sometimes. So that's going to do it for this week's show. And, I hope you all enjoyed it. So please continue not only to check out this show, the weekly Something Else podcast, but also the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Rewatch Along project coming out every Friday, where we talk about Smoky Mountain Wrestling beginning in 1992. And it's a good time. Fun is had by all. And we are on our way to crowning our first champions in Smoky Mountain. But until Friday, thank you all for listening. And we'll talk to you again later on. And welcome to episode number 044 of Something Else with Aria and not KJ. My name is Aria, and today we're talking about Mid-South Wrestling from July 1st, 1982. I am your hostess with the mostest, the greatest host in this podcast history, critically unaware. I am Aria. Thank you for so much for listening. I hope you're all having a good week. Wish the weather could make up its mind. It's gone from super sunny and humid to rainy and miserable and back and forth again. If you are LGBT, hoping you're having a wonderful Pride Month. And if you haven't been able to get out to go to a Pride Festival, hopefully you're able to before the end of the month. Understand totally if you're not comfortable doing it. So far, at least none of them that I've been aware of, there have been any incidents with some of our less trans-friendly friends out there. And hopefully that stays the course. I can definitely see why, if you are afraid to go out to a Pride event, I could definitely see why. The world the way it is lately sure as hell isn't making things any better. So today we're talking about Mid-South Wrestling from July 1st, 1982. And you know where you can listen to me talk about Mid-South Wrestling from July 1st, 1982? In fact, you can listen to me also talk about Smoky Mountain Wrestling every Friday on the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project. Of course, we're talking about tinyurl.com/somethingelsepod, angrymarks.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Castbox, Overcast, Pod Paradise, Castro, Podbay.fm, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. And as I remind you every single week, yes, these are all real places. So with that, let's dive into things. It is Mid-South Wrestling from July 1st, 1982, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Last week, if you joined us, you might recall that Ted DiBiase defeated Junkyard Dog for the North American title Dog, who had been Louisiana champion, had just defeated Bob Roop a few days earlier for the North American title. And so we had to forfeit the Louisiana title before this match because you can only hold one singles title at a time. And then DiBiase, realizing that he may not be able to beat the Dog, he put a foreign object in his glove, the glove that Bob Roop claimed he had on to try to injure Roop. And DiBiase claimed that it was there for an injury. He slipped the foreign object into his glove, and he knocked Dog the fuck out. And we have a new North American champion. Right now, though, to give you a heads up, there's a little bit of doubt. Not everybody is, believing what they saw, so to speak. So we're going to get an update on all that here today. And we're going to start the show with Boyd Pierce and Bill Watts kicking the show off and previewing what we're going to have to see today.
Fans, I'm Boyd Pierce, your host this week on Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. We appreciate you viewing with us because a lot of action. The Mississippi Heavyweight Championship on the line. Mr. Olympia defending against the challenge of the Masked Grappler. Bob Roop in the ring against the inevitable Junkyard Dog. Ted DiBiase is back, taking on Tom Jones. Just a lot of great action. And the man who will tell us all about it, the Oklahoma Stampeder, our guest commentator, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Well, Boyd, a lot of things have been happening in Mid-South, and naturally with the Superdome looming as a large event of the summer in all professional wrestling, I think it often brings out the heat of the moment in a lot of events where everybody's still up in the air over Ted DiBiase. We have examined several things and have an in-depth situation which we'll go into later. And of course, the Junkyard Dog is going to have to somehow beat Bob Roop, or Bob Roop beat the Dog this he was number one in line for DiBiase's title. But now let's go to the ring and Reeser Bowden for this first big event on today's card.
So we have our two big matches today. It is Mr. Olympia versus the Grappler for the Mississippi State title, and Junkyard Dog versus Bob Roop, with the winner becoming the number one contender to Ted DiBiase's North American title. So we also have Ted DiBiase is going to be in action against Not That Tom Jones, and also Bill Watts is going to take a deep look at the DiBiase situation. But let's go to the ring here to kick things off. We kick things off with the Devil's Duo, Jeff Sword and Doug Vines, going 2-on-2 with Jesse Barr and Iron Mike Sharp. During this super exciting match, Watts talks about how Dog lost the Louisiana title when he won the North American title. However, he is still one half of the tag team champions. He talks about the tournament for the Louisiana title, which is going to be on July 6th. And the funny thing is, he starts talking about it as if he's going to tell you the results and who won. And suddenly he remembered that this show was taped, before July 6th, or this show was airing before July 6th. And thus he shouldn't tell the result. And instead he said, after a very awkward and long pause, that we're going to get the results of the Louisiana title tournament next week here in Mid-South. And also he announces that Hacksaw Jim Duggan is coming back. If you recall, he was here about 2 months ago. He was brought in as a bounty hunter for General Skandor Akbar and to wrestle Dick Murdoch. He failed at it, but he's now coming back. I believe he's in full time now, so we'll get to see him. So in the ring, Sword and Vines get the heat on Jesse Barr, who we last saw a few weeks ago, getting half of a push, where he wrestled one match where he was completely destroyed, and then immediately came out for a commercial after the commercial break and beat an enhancement talent already in the ring. So Barr takes down Sword with a suplex and makes a lukewarm tag to Sharp, and then Sharp wins quickly with an over-the-shoulder backbreaker. We go to commercial, and Bill wants to talk about the finish of DiBiase and Junkyard Dog. Let's go to that now.
Well, Boyd Pierce, there's two people that are never wrong, never make mistakes. One's a backseat driver, and the other's a Monday morning quarterback, because they always can tell what the other person did wrong and always correct them. And here we have a chance to look at a situation, and it's a very serious situation. Maybe I was making too light of it, the situation between the Junkyard Dog and Ted DiBiase. But Bob Roop made a comment in the closing moments of that match that DiBiase was doing something, taking something from his trunks and putting it in his glove. And he said, DiBiase had that ready for me, and now he's used it on the dog. And we went back and searched several tapes, and we saw that 2 weeks ago DiBiase had made an interview where Roop had accused him and said he didn't want him able to wear that glove, that it was, DiBiase claimed the glove is holding the tape of his injured hand in place, that when he started sweating, it would come loose, so he just had a glove on it to do it, and had been wearing the glove for about 3 weeks.
Right.
Roop said it was going to be used to cheat him out of the title. He didn't want DiBiase to be able to use it. Naturally, the Junkyard Dog never dreamed that this weapon would be used against him. But let's recall Ted DiBiase's interview and relive it as he was talking about wrestling Bob Roop for the title. 1 fall, no DQ, and he said he would never stoop so low as to use that glove to beat anybody. Let's relive that.
So that's all that happens here is they re-air the promo from 2 weeks ago where Ted DiBiase said, you heard Bill Watts say, that he would never use the glove as a foreign object to try to injure another man. It's only there to help him with an injury. And we're believing that, Ted DiBiase is a good, clean Christian athlete. He would never do something like that. And so they re-air the promo of him talking about it. And they talk about how, Bob Roop was talking about how DiBiase was taking something out of his tights, implying that it wasn't made obvious on TV. And I guess if you're just going to say that, Bob Roop is a heel, he's just going to say, these kind of things to try to, get himself over more than, trying to put over DiBiase. And I guess you can kind of get it, even though DiBiase did it right on camera. And we come back from the promo, and Bill Watts is going to talk a little bit more before sending it to the finish of last week's match.
If Ted DiBiase is to categorize himself or type himself or convict himself, it'll be out of the words of his own mouth. Because we heard what he said as he thought he was going to be wrestling Bob Roop. As it turned out, he was wrestling the Junkyard Dog for that North American title. And we'll let you fans at home be the judge as just to what happened as we join the closing moments of that 1 fall, no disqualification match for the North American title, that if DiBiase had not have won, he would have had to leave the Mid-South area. Let's watch and see.
That was one of those times where Bill Watts needed to realize his show wasn't live and he could have retaped that intro. But either way, to give the benefit of the doubt, because DiBiase, up until this point, like we said, good, clean Christian athlete, would never dream that he would do something like use a foreign object to knock out his best friend. And so you want to take his word for it, even though, circumstances lead you to believe otherwise, because as they mentioned last week, no one has ever knocked out Junkyard Dog with 1 punch. And I mean, you could say, hey, look at all these famous boxers who never got knocked out until they did. Look at Chuck Liddell, who never got knocked out until he did. Look at Mike Tyson, who never got knocked out until he did. These were people with iron jaws that, no one could knock out until somebody did. And that's, trying to give Ted DiBiase the benefit of the doubt here. Just trying and saying that, hey, Junkyard Dog, he's taken a lot of punches to the face. And while, yes, for years he's been punched in the face and it hasn't knocked him out like that, maybe this was 1 punch too many. Maybe Ted just hit him in the right spot at the right place at the right time with a clean punch and it knocked him out. Maybe. So let's go back. They replayed the finish of the match. Let's go back to the desk, and Bill Watts is going to recap it here.
Well, DiBiase maintains that he did not do anything with the glove. And if he had, it's a no disqualification match, so nothing can be done about it anyway. The Junkyard Dog, in talking to him, said he's been hit with everything from when he was a kid in the ghetto, ball bats, everything else, but he's never been hit that hard because he was so wide open. He wasn't looking to have to protect his jaw. Well, you people will be the judge and the jury, and we have Ted DiBiase and Tom Jones in the ring for the next event.
All righty. So, hey, you know, they're trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, more so than I was or Bob Roop did last week. They're trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, trying to say, hey, you know, this guy's an honorable man. He said that he would never do that. And as a good, honorable babyface, we have to take his word for it. Even if things look suspicious, we have to give the thought that, hey, maybe, just maybe, you know, maybe it's just, you know, some camera trickery, a sleight of hand, you know, whatever have you. But, you know, we'll have to wait and see. So up next was Welsh singer Tom Jones, famous Tom Jones, who, according to Wikipedia, his voice has been described as a full-throated, robust baritone, and singing songs like, you know, It's Not Unusual and What's New Pussycat, you know, and oh yeah, She's a Lady, you know, what a multi-talented wrestler we have here. Tom Jones, you know, at this point, he's going on 40. He's 42 years old. He just had a birthday in June. And, you know, actually here in 2023, he just had a birthday a few days ago. Happy birthday, Tom Jones. I can't believe you got in the ring and wrestled Ted DiBiase. Wait. I'm sorry. Just saw a picture. It's not that Tom Jones. It's not that Tom Jones. So we got our next match. It was North American champion Ted DiBiase versus not that Tom Jones. Split reaction to DiBiase. It seems like the male fans are treating him like the heel that he is, and the female fans and the kids still want to believe in right and wrong. They still want to believe that this man is still good and decent and honorable. Bill Watts, apparently, while still trying to figure things out, said that DiBiase rode the coattails of Dick Murdoch years ago when he was a rookie. DiBiase is still subtle to a degree, but DiBiase's doing a lot of heel facials. You know, again, this isn't $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase quite yet, but he is a lot closer to the Ted DiBiase we all remember and love from the late 80s than he was to the Ted DiBiase of 6 months ago. So, not that Tom Jones got in a bit of offense. Of course, being a fiery babyface, he immediately slapped on a chin lock. Not that Tom Jones hit a few bigger moves. And then we got the finish. So I'm going to play the finish here for you. Not that Tom Jones has just headbutted Ted DiBiase. DiBiase's falling back into the ropes, and Alfred Neely's going to go in to break it up. And that's where we pick it up here as we play the finish of this match.
That's a big one. He's got DiBiase in a lot of trouble. DiBiase's going to his tights, Boyd. I can't believe my eyes. The champion going to his tights, and something is going in that glove, Boyd Pierce. Tom Jones hadn't seen it. DiBiase reverses Jones in, and he tees off. And Jones is out. Tom Jones is out. DiBiase's picking him up. Pile driver. Inside cradle. Boyd Pierce, I think, right there. One picture is worth 10,000 words in this. Look at the defiance. Look at the defiance on DiBiase's face as he faces that crowd. Ted DiBiase, the North American champion, may have just embarked on a rocky, rocky road, Boyd Pierce.
From the tights to the glove to the jaw to the pile driver, a victory for Ted DiBiase. The Junkyard Dog versus Bob Roop after this message from Mid-South Wrestling.
All righty. So, first of all, sorry for coughing there on air. For some reason, I'm dealing with a little bit of a cough lately. But you just heard it. Tom Jones had him going, and he had him on the ropes, and Ted reached into his tights, right on camera, seen by Bill Watts, seen by Boyd Pierce. He reached into his tights, pulled out a foreign object, loaded his glove, and knocked Tom Jones the fuck out. That wasn't quite the finish, as DiBiase still picked him up and gave him a pile driver for the pin. But now there is no doubt about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Ted DiBiase is a heel. He is not someone to be trusted here in Mid-South Wrestling. And, you know, it I gotta say, it is a bad day to have heroes here in Mid-South Wrestling. We then go to a match that was set up last week because Bob Roop is an idiot. It is Junkyard Dog versus Bob Roop. So, what happened last week? Now, if you recall, Ted DiBiase, if he had lost last week's match, he was supposed to leave Mid-South Wrestling forever. So, Roop, when doing commentary, challenged Junkyard Dog to a match for the North American title this week because Junkyard Dog is, because Ted DiBiase is not going to be able to beat Junkyard Dog. DiBiase couldn't beat Bob Roop, and Bob Roop couldn't beat Junkyard Dog. Thus, DiBiase can't beat Dog. It's that simple. However, Roop didn't challenge the North American champion. Technically, he challenged Junkyard Dog. So, even though he wanted a title match, and that's technically what he was challenging for, the ultimate challenge was against Junkyard Dog. So instead of getting a title match with DiBiase this week, we have Bob Roop go one-on-one with one half of the tag team champions, Junkyard Dog. And this is really nothing match. Reeser, by the way, introduces Dog as the Louisiana champion, even though he's not. Roop is back to getting his butt kicked for 95% of the match. In fact, this one was pretty much 100% of the match. Dog blocked a hip toss and hit one of his own, and then hit the thump for the easy victory. I wish there was more to say about the match. There wasn't. But Dog is main eventing the Superdome in a couple weeks. Bob Roop is not. So what the hell? Let's go with it. We then get our Mississippi State title match. It was Mr. Olympia versus the Grappler. Here today in Louisiana, we will discover who the best wrestler in Mississippi is. I know I've said this before, but why exactly does Louisiana have jurisdiction over a Mississippi title match? So Olympia's masks keep changing from week to week lately. He's now in a blue mask with red stars all over it. This match was a backdrop to an animated discussion going on at ringside between what appeared to be an African-American security guard. Well, I mean, he didn't appear to be African-American. He was African-American. He appeared to be a security guard, and an elderly white lady at ringside. Now, unfortunately, I cannot tell you for sure what was being said, except the gentleman seemed to be trying really hard to get his point across to this old lady, and this old lady was not having it. And, the gentleman was down on his knee to talk to her because she was sitting in her seat, and she stood right up and got in his face. And I don't know what the hell this was all about, but what I think was a security guard, because, I mean, he was dressed kind of that way, he just got up and left and let it go. The conspiracy theorist in me, because he was the older lady was sitting next to an African-American couple, it's possible something was said. And I mean, this is Louisiana in 1982. I don't want to imply anything, but it would make sense with everything else going on with that little confrontation. And we announced that after a 3-week absence, Paul Ellering is back next week with another spotlight. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, if you're listening to this and you have never watched any of these shows I'm talking about, go to Peacock right now. If you're not subscribed, they got like 1,000 deals that you could sign up for to get Peacock on the cheap. Go sign up. Pardon me 1 second. Sorry about that. Go to Peacock right now. Go to Mid-South Wrestling. I believe Peacock listed as July 10th, 1982. It's actually July 8th, 1982. But either way, there is a segment with Paul Ellering doing exercise. And it is just the greatest bit of television we have ever seen and we'll talk about on this show next week. I promise you, and I am prone to hyperbole, I'll be the first to admit I am the most hyperbolic mother bleeper known to man. This is a tremendous happening next week with Paul Ellering. You need to go watch it. I am not kidding you. This isn't like that time when I told you to stop what you were doing and watch Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate at NXT TakeOver. This is just 2 minutes of amazingness. And it is worth going out of your way to check out before we're back on the show next week. Plus, well, they announced that next week, and I want you to keep this in mind for next week, Bob Roop will go one-on-one with Dr. Death Steve Williams. Just keep that in mind. So back to the match. So Bill Watts, being Bill Watts, is so excited by this match that he approved the booking of that he starts talking about amateur wrestling. Grappler tried to rip off Olympia's mask, which pissed off Mr. Olympia and led to his comeback. Grappler loaded up his boot, but to no avail. Olympia slapped on the sleeper. Grappler got out of it, and Olympia won with a schoolboy. I mean, the match, there was nothing wrong with the match. It was a fine match, but everything that had nothing to do with the match was a lot more exciting than the match. We then get our third main event, which ended up, for some reason, ended up being a standby match instead of, an actual main event that, like we were promised. It was Big Cat Ernie Ladd versus Killer Khan with General Skandor Akbar in his corner. Ladd gets the early advantage and begins dancing a little bit. And that somehow leads to Khan getting the motivation to take over. Ladd used some of the worst forearms you've ever seen before he rested Khan's neck on the top rope and choked Khan with his leg. Now, Khan, every time he does an offensive maneuver, he makes a little yip. He makes a little scream, a little yell, a little holler. And Boyd Pierce and Bill Watts have decided to try to explain to us folks what that means. Well, let's go to that right now.
Bill, if you'll notice Oriental stars, most of them have a ritual they go through. Killer Khan, whenever he becomes the aggressor, he has a mercenary squeal.
Well, that squeal or that scream comes way back from that early judo and martial arts training. It's more than just psychological. The actual fact is that when you make a move or a technique move of any kind, when you scream, it forces the tightening of your abdominal muscles, which adds to the power and strength of whatever you do. So it's really not just a scream to put fear in the heart of your opponent, but it's actually a technique they learned from childhood in the Eastern and the Oriental and the Mongolian countries, where they hand-to-hand combat is something taught from a very young age.
Okay, so the Oriental stars, as Boyd Pierce tells us, like to yell and scream when doing their wrestling moves. Okie dokie. And then Bill Watts doubles down on it and getting all geopolitical with us, as he tells us about how the Eastern and Mongolian countries, the people are taught this while they're being taught hand-to-hand combat. Because apparently that is something that they teach you in the Eastern and Mongolian countries. But by the way, the Mongolian countries, before I sound really stupid, I'm just going to do a quick Google search here. Hang on with me just now, just for a second. All right, so the Mongolian countries is Mongolia. Just double checking, to make sure that there wasn't something I didn't know. I'm just going to lie to you fine people here on this fine podcast type program. But no, it is what it is, I guess. So what says the referee? And uh, the referee needs to enforce the loosely enforced rules. He said, as he said that, Khan ran into the referee. Akbar gets up on the apron of the chair, but Ladd turned the tables on him in the wrong way, and Khan collided with Akbar in the corner. But Khan got a hold of the chair and hit Ladd with it, and the referee got in just as Khan hit a super kick and a knee drop for the pin. So Killer Khan with a big win here over Big Cat, Ernie Ladd, and now Killer Khan. And this hasn't been mentioned on TV, and I don't think it is. But he's going to the Superdome, as mentioned last week, to go one-on-one with Andre the Giant. Then we get what's essentially our last standby match, but there is something afterwards. It's Rick Hangman Harris versus, to quote Reeser, Buckley Christopher George Robley III. I'm not sure if we ever find out why Reeser always introduces Buck Robley under his full Christian name. I talked to Mike Mills of Booking the Territory about that this week, and we just, we chalked this up to Reeser being a Reeser. Robley in the past has wrestled as Buckley Christopher and George Robley, and so Reeser just not only just continually introducing him as Buckley Christopher George Robley III, but no one even corrects him. No one even bothers to go up to Reeser and be like, dude, just say the guy's name. It's like, well, Bill, I am. And Bill's like, no, Reeser, you're just fucking around with us here. Just say Buck Robley. Well, Bill, that's not his name. My Reeser Bowden needs a lot of work. Anywho, Bill Watts, as we go through our sorry about that. Jesus Christ. Bill Watts is wondering, hey, Ted DiBiase has used underhanded tricks to win the North American title from Junkyard Dog. Well, Ted DiBiase has some other friends here in Mid-South who don't know what's going on. Well, let's go to Bill Watts, and he's going to talk about it for a minute and 14 seconds.
When I think about the redneck, Captain Redneck, the ex-Marine that's so proud of it on his foreign tour in Tokyo, Dubai, Hong Kong, I just wonder what his reaction's going to be when word catches up to him, and word travels so fast in wrestling. When word catches up to him about Ted DiBiase, his young protege, the man that he's known Teddy since Teddy was a youngster, and Dick Murdoch always looked up to Ted's deceased father, Iron Mike, who was fatally injured in a match in Texas and died, and Iron Mike DiBiase. I just wonder what Dick Murdoch, how he's going to reflect on this situation, because, he was a partner of the Dogs. And they said that it could never be done, that a redneck like Dick Murdoch and the Junkyard Dog, a man from the ghetto, could ever be a team. The Murdoch and Dog were a team, and they were an inseparable team, and they were a victorious team. And now for Ted DiBiase, his own protege, so to speak, to be so treacherous and so infamous against the Junkyard, I just wonder what Dick Murdoch will say and what his reaction will be. A lot of things going through my mind right now, Boyd Pierce, and of course, Buck Robley.
All right. So what is going through Dick Murdoch's head? What is his reaction to his protege, Ted DiBiase, turning on Murdoch's friend? So is Murdoch going to have to make a decision here when he comes back in a few weeks? Is he going to stick with his protege, Ted DiBiase? Is he going to go with his, new friend, the Junkyard Dog? I guess it's just one of those things we're going to have to wait and find out. So Watts said Mid-South is always exciting. He said that during a Rick Harris armbar, by the way. One of several Rick Harris armbars, by the way. Robley used, and I quote, several quick moves, but Harris dropped him with a swinging neckbreaker. Harris tried to use his hangman's neckbreaker submission, but Robley flipped out of it, adjusted his brace on his arm, cracked Harris with it, and then won with an elbow drop. So up next, to prepare us for the return of Hacksaw Jim Duggan next week, they showed us about 3 minutes of a match from Southwest Championship Wrestling in San Antonio between Jim Duggan and Frank Monty. They do remind us that Duggan was a bounty hunter a few months ago for Skandor Akbar. The announcers, who I don't know, were very impressed with Duggan's shoulder breaker. And at one point, they tried to tell us an update about Dick Schlater, but Monty made his comeback. Here's one to remember for next week. Duggan caught Monty jumping off the ropes. He caught him in his arms and then ran him into 2 different turnbuckles before dropping him with, backbreaker for the win. And that's how the show went off the air. So I'm going to see if I can find out who those announcers were. Let's see. Well, we can't guarantee that here, but the commentators, according to those reliable Wikipedia, the commentators were Gene Kelly, Gene Goodson, Steve Stack, and Rapido Rodriguez. Now, I don't know who either of the 2 announcers were. I should point out that nobody was using a horribly stereotypical Hispanic accent. So my guess is one of them was not Rapido Rodriguez. But, here we are. But yeah, that is going to do it for this week's Mid-South Wrestling. Obviously, this happens all the time when you build up to a big angle on TV, a big storyline, and then the next week, it might be a little slower. This week was even still good. It's, but, they're now paying off that long storyline that we just watched for months. And now, while we're going through this, they're setting the table for the next big TV angle or the next big TV match. And we'll see what happens there. That's Mid-South. We'll talk about July 8th next week. I feel like I should know this. Yes, July 8th. Just a reminder, go watch the Paul Ellering segment. You will not be disappointed that I'm telling you to do this repeatedly. This is a segment that should be long remembered and be talked about through the annals of time as an all-time fantastic moment in wrestling history. But before we talk about that next week, we got to talk about Weird News of the Week this week. That is, of course, Weird News of the Week presented by Nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And for that, of course, we go to UPI.com. We go to our old friend Ben Hooper, and we have alligator wanders into South Carolina fire station. Firefighters in South Carolina said they ejected an unwanted visitor after an alligator wandered into their station. The Awendaw-McClellanville Consolidated Fire District said in a Facebook post that firefighters at Fire Station 4 in McClellanville found the gator. The district shared a photo of the alligator wandering near a fire engine parked inside the station. Alligators are a big part of the Low County ecosystem and frequently seen outside of firehouses, the district said. The alligators ushered outside, quote unquote, without any issues, officials wrote. And checking out the photo that was posted on Facebook, that is a nice sizable alligator. I certainly would not have wanted to get close to that one myself. I got to tell you that. And this was on the Allendale McClellanville Consolidated Fire Facebook page, which, that's a hell of a name right there. But yeah, so that is going to do it for the show this week. Just a continued reminder, please check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project that comes out every Friday on the same platforms you're listening to the dulcet tones of my voice on now. You do not have to subscribe to anything else. If you subscribe to something else, you not only get this show, the weekly Something Else show where we talk about Mid-South Wrestling, but you also get the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project every single week. But, once again, thank you all for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you again later on.